Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Fanfiction podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Today, we're diving into a brand new story. Danmachi 6, The Renard Bunny Part 2, by Nuri_Kairos_Arcadia. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. First Class Renard. Chapter Summary. The expedition resumes though a little awkward as Anya walks in on the couple as things get steamy. Belle and the expedition proceed forwards and amidst the battle. Shows off another ability of his that surprises the group. As they keep pushing forwards, they encounter a suspicious group of adventurers which they end up having to deal with. Following the incident, they set camp further down in the dungeon before setting off to hunt down Udius. Their battle goes well, but fate isn't as kind as to just let them relax. And a new threat emerges which requires Belle to take drastic measures. After the battle reaches its conclusion, the group returns to camp where circumstances force Belle and Elise to have more intimate moments. With all the requirements met, the expedition finishes and the powerful group of adventurers make their way back. In the meantime, Taika Mikazuchi familiar fights their own deadly battle and are barely saved by Belle. On his way back from his mission, Anya began stirring from her sleep. The time for her guard shift was about to approach. The cat girl groggily rubbed her eyes as she awoke. She lazily changed her clothes and stretched before opening the flap of her tent and heading to the fire at the center of their camp. As she stumbled to the eye of the camp, the girl completely woke up as if someone dropped a bucket of ice-cold water on her. But the reason for that was what she was witnessing. Walking in on Elise and Belle making out was a shocker for Anya. She knew the two were a couple, that much was obvious after the confession at the hostess. But catching them in the act caused the poor, innocent girl to blush brightly. She didn't want to interrupt them, but at the same time she was incredibly curious. So, after standing out in the open for nearly a minute, she dove for cover, not wanting to be spotted by the two. Hiding in a bush very close to the couple, Anya laid down and watched as the two continued. Without being aware of the cat girl spying on them, two concentrated on the new experience. Anya watched as the two sat next to each other. Belle's hands were around Elise's waist while the red-haired girl latched her hands behind his neck. Their lips pressed against each other, and as they lost themselves in the moment, the two got more and more daring. First Elise, then Belle. Their hands began wandering and exploring each other's bodies. Then, Elise decided to push on and proceeded to tap Belle's lips with her tongue, which Belle quickly allowed entrance. Anya watched in stupor as their tongues swirled around each other and their love for each other just kept on increasing. The red-haired girl got up a little, without ever breaking the kiss, and moved to sit on Belle's lap, still facing him, her legs on each side of his waist as her pelvis grinded against his own point. One of Elise's hands held onto the back of his neck while one of them grabbed Belle's left hand and guided it to her unarmored chest. Belle followed Elise's lead and let her place his hand on her breast, feeling a softness that he didn't believe could be possible. Without thinking, he began gently squeezing, drawing out cute yelps and moans out of Elise. Belle too began being more aggressive and moved his right hand over Elise's butt, groping her left cheek. If not for the fact that they were in the dungeon and other people were around, Elise would have loved to just strip down here and make Belle hers. But she resisted the urge and just decided to satisfy herself with the warm touch of Belle's hands and lips. In the meantime, he kept gently kneading Elise's chest and butt as the two kept on making out, reveling in the newfound feelings, joy, pleasure, and satisfaction that the two had never experienced beforehand. Elise then pushed Belle down to the ground and deepened the kiss as much as she could, her hips never stopping to grind against Belle. Her own hands began cupping his cheek and exploring his muscular abs as she felt herself want more and more, her core heating up rapidly. Anya kept watching silently from her bush as the two kissed and caressed each other intensely without ever taking a break. Lost in their constant adoration for each other, the two never noticed Anya, who began unknowingly slowly make her way to them. The couple too, lost in their bliss, only noticed her as she stumbled and landed face first into the ground with a yelp just a meter away from the two adventurers who had been making out until Now, Kia. As the cat girl slowly looked up to them, a deathly silence took over. Anya quietly stared at the couple, blushing as much as the two caught red-handed. Anya. Hee jigade morning Naya. And please remember to not tell anyone. Absolutely no one, you understand. Anya. If you do, I'd die of embarrassment. It would be the absolute end of my life. And don't think that. You won't be accompanying me to the grave. Belle was right up in Anya's face, desperately making her swear that she will keep silent. Isn't it fine? Anya and Belle turned to Elise, who had quickly calmed down. We're a couple, it wouldn't be that unusual. Still, I don't want anyone to know. It'd be too embarrassing. How would I face Take a Mikazuchi and Astrea? I'm sure my goddess wouldn't mind so much. Might soon be part of it. The red-haired girl whispered the last part, causing Belle to raise an eyebrow. What did you say? The girl, however, beamed and simply shook her head. Nothing, Tilda. Belle looked at her confused before turning back to Anya. Nyon T Mori white hair, I'll naip it a secret Naya. T thank you Anya. The flap of the other tents then fluttered open as each member came out wearing casual clothes. It was somewhat unusual for Belle, as he had only seen them in their waitress uniform up until now. Good morning. Lunoir looked curiously at Anya and Belle, who blushed a little, while Elise glowed with an ever-bright smile. Naya. It's Naya thing. Yee, it's really Naya thing. Chloe looked at her suspiciously before turning to Belle, who was now looking normal. Though still very innocent, the boy was quick to calm down and act according to the situation. As Anya said, it's nothing of important. MIA was the first to dismiss the situation. She didn't buy what the two said, but it wasn't hard to guess that the dumb cat had walked in on the couple. Whatever you say, boy. Let's get a move on. We still have monsters waiting to drop items for us. We can't hang here forever. We gotta go down to the 35th floor. Eventually. The group spent the next several hours fighting hordes of monsters. Deadly hornets, bloody hives, green dragons, hobgoblins, moss-huge, metal rabbits, poison vermis, drag octopus, carbuncles and raider fishes were amongst the most common monsters appearing. At the beginning, Belle was quick to adapt and easily dispatched dozens of the various types of monsters along with Elise, Anya, Lunoir, and MIA. Chloe, who decided to tag along this time, offered support from the rear, occasionally sneaking behind large group of monsters and launching surprise attacks. Belle proceeded to fight with large, powerful swings, wiping out waves of monsters. Every time he swung the long sword that Tsubaki provided to him, occasionally they'd meet some rarer monsters like sirens and aqua serpents. Belle dodged the tail of one of the serpents, and before the monster could go for a second attack, Elise arrived behind it, cutting it down. The fight was also proving to be an efficient training method to improve the party's teamwork and ability to coordinate with each other. The group went from floor 24 down to 25. There they began meeting harpers, devil mosquitoes, blue crabs, as well as crystal turtles. Despite there being a lot of high-leveled monsters, the waves proved useless against the group of first and second class adventurers, and it seemed to have irritated the dungeon as it suddenly spawned a mixed group of light quartzes, Kristaroth urchins, and a flock of iguazus. The large group of monsters spread out and surrounded the Renard, much to the surprise of the adventurers. The iguazus shot down, the light quartzes fired their lasers, and the urchins rolled with their claws out towards the Renard. The girls shouted Belle to watch out, but he once again surprised them as he dove nose first into the ground. But instead of crashing into the ground face first, he vanished in a mist of ice. Monsters and adventurers alike watched confused before the mist of ice began moving around. The monsters huddled together as the white mist flowed over the ground, in a circle around them, encircling them like the monsters had done to the Renard before. As the monsters were all gathered together, the Renard materialized out of the mist, right in the midst of the group of monsters, spinning with his sword in hand as he shot upwards. The misty vortex that was Belle's sword cut up all the monsters in an instant. The attack came to an end as the mist dissipated and Belle landed on the solid ground. What was that? Elise came running to him with an excited glint in her eyes. Oh, that. It's one of my skills. It's called Senho. Allows me to turn into an icy mist and travel at much faster speeds. That is so cool. Behind Elise, Anya also looked at him with starry eyes. Cool. Nyat fair. Meow also Nyant's a cool skill Naya. MIA also showed a little surprise and wondered what other surprises he has in store. Well, I do have a few aces up my sleeve. Actually, there is a spell that I have never used before. My previous god said that it was incredibly powerful and dangerous. So I shouldn't use it unless really necessary. That caused the eyebrows of his fellow party members to arch up. They didn't pry any further, but couldn't help but wonder what kind of spell it was. If even a god deemed it dangerous, then the power of said spell must have been beyond anyone's imagination. Unknowingly, the group would learn of the magic's omnipotent power later in the expedition. The following 2 days, the party continuously hunted down monsters across the 20th to 29th floor. The required drops were quickly and easily gathered thanks to Belle's developmental ability. During this time, Belle learnt a lot more about fighting with monsters and their different characteristics. Elise and MIA were also surprised by the adaptability of the Renard. The expedition that should have lasted for nearly a month was seemingly going to be completed by the end of the first week, all thanks to Belle's developmental ability, which raised the chances of getting drop items from the monsters. I think that's all an extra. Lunoir checked their inventory, making sure that they had all the required drop items. Not only did they meet the requirements, but they had extra as well, and it never hurt to have more than the required. It just meant more money for them. Good, then I say we proceed further down. How about it, boy? The Renard looked at MIA and nodded. You also said that you wanted to fight against Eudeus, right? You heard me right, boy. With me and Elise as frontliners and the rest of you providing support. One of the most troublesome features of the old skeleton is that he summons Spatwa, warrior-type monsters. They are as strong as level 4 adventurers, so be careful. The group then headed back to camp and packed up the tents before resuming their way down, passing by the boss room that still had signs of Belle's and the Amphisbaena's fight. They proceeded down to the 29th floor, where they ran into the first signs of life other than monsters, a group of adventurers. It was surprising to find a group of adventurers there, since they weren't many who could get this deep in the dungeon. The few familiars that could were the Astrea, Ganesha, Loki, Freya, and occasionally the Ishtar familiar, but the group in front of them didn't look to be part of any of the aforementioned familiars. They didn't wear the black armor of the Freya familiar. They didn't look like Amazon Bobellas from the Ishtar familiar, nor did they wear the typical orange uniform of the Ganesha familiar. They couldn't be members of the Astrea familiar, since there were only few members, and Elise was sure they were all on the surface, besides the obvious fact that she would recognize any of the other 10 members. The only possibility was that they were some low-ranked members of the Loki familiar, but at the same time it seemed weird, since the Loki familiar was well organized. They wouldn't allow people below the 27th floor without at least a level 4, and Elise and MIA didn't see any of the level 4s or executives among them. That caused MIA and Elise to grow alarmed, as there was only one other group known to be able to appear around the lower and deep floors. Everless, an organization Orario had been fighting for years. Belle, let's be careful. The Renard's ear twitched. Why is that? Belle noticed her wary look as she stared at the group approaching them from the front. They might be members of Everless. The white-haired boy turned his eyes back to the group of men, thug-looking men, closing in on them. Hearing a metallic whistle, Belle's ear twitched slightly. His eyes narrowed and glared at the approaching group. Let mine tails bring forth the cold of snow. Belle began the chant to his spell, whispering it to the point where even Elise didn't pick it up. Display the beauty of thy mold and flow. Meanwhile, the two groups now stood in front of each other, with MIA standing at the front, confronting the leader of the opposing group. Merciless are the frozen blades of nature's storm. MIA looked wary of the group as the leader spoke, his gestures suggesting less than appreciated ideas, reinforced when MIA frowned and gave the man a glare, with flawless poise and elegant form. By the violent gestures it looked like things were getting tense. MIA looked angry, while the opposing leader acted cocky. The blizzard veils my belief. Belle began chanting louder as the spell came up, the magic circle faintly forming. Under his feet as the Renard poured more mind into the spell. At the same time the thugs brought out their weapons. In the hands of some of the members were orange-colored orbs. Orbs that Belle recognized as Kensuke, a deadly drop item that could be used as an explosive. It seemed like they had planned this ambush. The group tried to throw the rocks but didn't get the time to do so. Pity is the sight of thine grief. Elise being the first to notice Belle's spell, as his magic circle became brighter and brighter, pushed everyone out of the way. It was at that moment that the group of adventurers noticed the Renard, but it was too late now. Yukusho Sumetsu. Belle finished the spell that made his tail glow a bright azure color. He turned around and generated a storm, with thousands of ice blades spinning within the storm, with his tail that propelled forwards against the group. The arrogant leader was immediately engulfed and was soon joined by the rest of his companions. The freezing temperature and the spinning ice blades made short work of the group and cut them into pieces along with the bombs. No screams or shouts were heard as they died instantly inside the spell. Their skin was frozen, showing signs of frostbite, and their limbs torn apart with clean and precise cuts. Everything in the path of the spell had been frozen and torn apart. Not only the adventurers, but the floor and any landform that stood in the way as well. As the spell's effect ended, the storm simply dispersed as it had never been there, the frost being the only trace of the spell. At Belle's side the girls looked shocked at the result of the white-haired boy's spell. Yet they could tell that the spell Belle talked about before was not this one, which made them question what kind of spell he still had up his sleeve. Elise turned to look at Belle's face, but he seemed completely undisturbed by the sight of the corpses in front of him. She kind of expected that, but at the same time she couldn't help but be surprised at how the normally shy and innocent boy seemed indifferent to death. Then again he did show to have a much more serious and dangerous side when in battle or confronting his enemies. Nothing like the usual blushing Renard. And to be fair, that was one of Belle's charms and a reason why she loved him dearly. The mere thought brought a smile to her face, while Elise observed Belle with admiration and awe. Despite the carnage he just caused, MIA had walked over to the bodies and checked them. As she had expected, she found magic items and identifications that showed their affiliation to Evelus. Naya, that surprised me. I didn't think you'd kill them honestly. Not that I have anything against that. MIA agreed with both Chloe and Lunwa. Ye really didn't expect you to have that in you, boy. And you're right, Lunwa. There is no need to think about it. These were Evelus scum. Belle looked at MIA with a serious look as he spoke with a cold tone. As you said, they are members of Evelus. People who are evil and commit crimes. For the pleasure and fun of it deserve not any kind of pity or mercy. Even so, I don't normally take someone's life. It is precious and should be valued greatly. However, even then, there is a limit as to what can be tolerated. Sometimes you have to let go and take hard decision to save others. Elise curiously looked at him as a question popped up in his head. Could it be that you have met members of Evelus before? Yes. They once tried to release monsters on my village far up north. Apparently it was a fun hobby for them. The red-haired captain frowned at that. Normally she left the judgment of one's sins to her goddess. But when she heard that, she couldn't believe that she'd have been able to forgive those people. She couldn't say with certainty that she wouldn't have killed them. Suddenly, Belle's ears and tails went stiff for a moment as he recalled something else. Matter of fact, I remember they said it was a part of a plan to divert Orario's attention away from the dungeon. That certainly caught Elise's attention as she looked at the Renard worriedly. Are you sure about that? Yes, pretty sure. The red-haired girl put a hand to her chin as she began thinking. As the captain of the Astrea Familia, it was her duty to think about Orario's safety. I'll have to report this to Astrea and Shakti. Mama, Elysian. The red-haired girl was brought out from her thoughts as she looked at the brown-haired cat girl, who was pointing at the bodies. What do Naya do with Nais? We dump them, of course. Mia's answer came immediately, as did the smack on the back of Anya's head. I agree with MIA. These are members of Evelus and don't seem to be important. Members or anything of the sort. We have no obligation to bring them with us. Besides, we're halfway through an expedition, and I certainly won't bring the bodies with us down nor up. Though it's not my style, there is little we can do without putting ourselves in danger. It would slow us down, and it would only put us in danger. Unless you want to personally carry the bodies back, they might as well be left for monsters to feed on them or rot here in the dungeon. Naya, I guess. The brown-haired girl simply shrugged her shoulders as if it was a normal occurrence before turning to proceed down to the 34th floor. Lunoir, Chloe, and MIA followed behind her soon after. What's the matter, Belle? The red-haired girl had stayed behind as she saw the reflective look on the Renard's face, his ears slightly twitching every once in a while. I don't know. I just feel like there is more to this than it looks. I think we're missing the bigger picture. Why would Everless members suddenly appear before us? Well, it looks to me like a badly attempted ambush. They didn't expect to have someone like you to freeze their bombs. But you're right. No matter how useless and idiotic most members of Everless are, the leader is a mastermind, and each plan is always carefully laid out. They are always cautious, and their ideas truly ingenious. It's hard to think he'd make a mistake like this. It would mean that they were either working alone, or he was testing to judge our combat strength. The Renard finished Elise's sentence, to which she nodded. Elise noticed how Belle's ears twitched adorably. She could barely hold back from jumping on the Renard, but quickly recomposed herself as she remembered where they were. We just have to be careful and not get too reckless. Such as you trying to fight Udius alone. Elise gave the white-haired boy a blank stare, puffing out her cheeks as she cutely prodded him. Belle simply giggled, brining her head close and giving her a kiss on the forehead. The action immediately drew a blush out of her, though it did little to alleviate the pout on her face. Don't worry. I'm not as dumb as to challenge Udius to a fight by myself. I heard the Sword Princess challenged it alone in order to level up to 6, and she barely managed. Good. She gave the Renard a tight hug before grabbing his hand and dragging herself and Belle back to the party. Unbeknownst to them, a cloaked figure had listened in from a distance, never having directly laid their eyes on the couple, noticing how sensitive the Renard was to someone's gaze as his ears seemed to twitch and his eyes began to scan the surrounding whenever she looked at the Renard. After several hours, the group made its way down to the 36th floor. Unlike the Amphispina, Udius was known to not be able to move from where it spawned. This made it safer than the 25th and 26th floor, allowing the party to camp out on the 36th floor and use it as a base to move up or down the floors. All done, Naya. Anya rubbed her hands to shake off the dirt on them as she looked at the efforts of her work. Her tent, which wouldn't have been set up if not for everyone else pitching in to help her. Behind her, the group looked exasperated as the memory of the clumsy cat girl trying to set up a tent came back to them. Anyways, with this we will move between the 37th floor and the 30th floor. Boy, before we go around slaying monsters for their drop items, I say we go give Udius a beating. How about we go after we rest for tonight? The Renard thought about it for a little before nodding. Very well. Like that we wouldn't have to worry about the monster wreck spawning while we are venturing the 37th floor. Seeing everyone smile, Belle couldn't help but be encouraged. Thyan tomorrow, Naya. Let's Nio kick Nio Monster Rex Nias. Everyone laughed at Anya's determined declaration before retreating to their respective tents. After confirming the guard duty shifts, Belle and Elise had stayed behind for a moment while everyone else vanished in their tents. The two made sure to check that all of them were in and weren't peeking before turning to each other. Hee. Good night, Belle. Good night, Elise. The two shyly gave each other a peck on the lips before Belle returned to his respective tent and retiring for the night. Elise, on the other hand, sat in front of his tent and prepared herself for the boring role that was staying on guard duty. Naya. Chloe stretched her arms out, letting out her characteristic feline yawn. Behind the flaps of the tents began fluttering as the rest of the party all came out. Like her, they stifled a yawn or stretched their slumbering limbs. Morning, everyone. Belle politely greeted them, already awake for the past 2 hours as he had the last guard shift. The Renard sat around a fire as he was already preparing breakfast for the entire battle group. The delicate perfume that was Belle's food reached the noses of the group, causing them to drool. "Now making breakfast near us, white Nye." The Renard chuckled as he saw the glint in Anya's eyes and nodded. "Yup, we can't go beat a monster Rex without a full stomach after all." The entire party soon found themselves around the fire eating and laughing together. Mia on her side was impressed with the improvement Belle made when it came to cooking, under her and May's supervision, even more so after she tasted the food Belle served her. "Not bad, boy, you're improving." Hee, I can't let down the hostess name down after all." That caused a massive grin to grow on Mia's face. "Well said, boy. Now let's go kick that old skeleton's ass." The party ventured down and found themselves in the White Palace in less than an hour. They had stopped right before the entrance to the main room, where the monster Rex would spawn in. A last strategic meeting before facing the monster. "Remember, me, Elise and Belle will be the front liners. The rest of you provide cover. Chloe, use your potions to cover us. Lunoir and Anya, you two take care of as many Spartoy as you can. Belle, you will have the task of clearing a path for the two of us, while me and Elise will charge and distract the monster Rex. You will then use the change to sneak behind and land the final blow to Eudius." Everyone listened as the owner of the hostess assigned them a role and explained the plan. The party nodded as Mia scanned to see if anyone had any questions. Elise now recognized that Mia hadn't been the captain of the Freya Familia for nothing. She made resolute choices after assessing everyone's strengths and weaknesses, and more than anything she knew exactly how to lead people into battle. "Good, then let's go." The party unsheathed their weapons and entered the White Palace maintaining a tight formation. As they arrived in the center of the room, the ground shook, as if the dungeon recognized them as challenges. It gave rise to the monster Rex of the floor. The ground shattered as a massive black frame rose from the earth and towered over the group of adventurers. Its skeletal form was black, causing 2 features to stand out. A humongous magic stone protected by its rib cage and the pair of bright red eyes that now fixed its gaze on the group of adventurers. "Here we go, everyone." At the noise of Elise's shouting, Eudius met her with a ferocious roar that spawned dozens of armed Sparto. The first to charge were Anya and Lunoir, who met the force of Sparto head-on. Lunoir was the fastest to strike, landing a blow to the head of one of the black skeletons. Belle not having fought them before but knowing of the brown-haired fist fighters' strength, was surprised to see that the Sparto hadn't died, rather it took 2 more hits to collapse, attesting to their high defense capability. Anya on her side poked one of the black warriors in the eye, killing it, though the trick didn't work a second time as the second Sparto used its shield to protect itself. Just like an adventurer would, fighting with the same style and efficiency that an adventurer would. The dungeon truly is a terrifying place. Belle, however, didn't let himself be distracted and prepared to charge in as Chloe threw a couple burst oils and Kensuke bombs that she had gotten from Esfi. The front line of the Sparto was broken just then, allowing the 3 main attackers to charge through. With Belle at the head of the trio, the Renard performed wide swings with his long sword and the abnormal status that could rival a level 5, any Sparto that found itself within the range of the arc of Belle's blade was trounced instantly. Eudius, who until now only observed the battle, focused on the 3 approaching, recognizing them as the worthy challengers. It roared ferociously before punching the ground. From the place Eudius had punched, giant spikes begun shooting out of the ground and spreading forwards. Spike after spike, more kept jutting out of the ground until the attack stormed forwards towards the adventurers. Belle, Elise, and Mia jumped out of the way as the attack threatened to injure them. The entire path from the skeletal fist to the adventurers was now a wall of spikes. Belle was shocked to see such a devastating attack. There was no doubt in his mind that even he wouldn't survive if he were to try and take an attack like that head-on. The white-haired boy turned his attention back to the front where another wave of Sparto charged at him. Keeping the warrior-type monsters busy, Elise and Mia rushed past him and attacked the floor boss. no matter how big his body was and how slow he was due to it. The duo could not get close enough and was forced to chip away at the fists of the black skeleton, as it tried to crush them with his fists and a barrage of spikes. That, however, was part of the plan. Bell had left the remaining Spartoi to Anya and Lunwa, who had now caught up. Instead, the boy covertly rushed around the monster Rex. Running up from behind it, Bell was surprised when he felt the earth rumbling and wisely decided to jump back. The next instant, the place where he stood was filled with razor-sharp spikes jutting out of the floor. The Renard looked up at Eudeus just to see that the skull had turned slightly and was looking at him with the corner of his eye. It was at this point that Bell understood what Zeus intended. By saying the deeper he went, the smarter monsters were. Not only smart but sharp and intuitive. Elise and MIA were surprised to see their plan fall apart, but not entirely. Unexpected. Everyone came to a standstill as both monsters and adventurers re-evaluated their opponents. The brief pause, however, lasted a second and soon the fight resumed. The Renard was forced back by the spikes while MIA and Elise jumped away as Eudeus cleaned the area in front with a swipe of its massive arm. Bell, however, didn't relent and jumped from spike to spike, rapidly closing in on the monster Rex. As the arm moved to intercept him, Bell jumped on it and ran up the length of Eudeus' limb. Whilst running up, the Renard quickly weighed his options. Attack the magic stone or go for the head. He knew instantly that if he aimed for the magic stone, there was a high chance that he'd miss, his would be blocked, or that the monster Rex might even get the chance to land a devastating blow to him. With that in mind, he opted to weaken the monster. Instead, running past the height of the monster's rib cage, the white-haired boy rushed up and dashed up its shoulder, aiming for the eyes of the monster Rex. With a burst of strength, Bell propelled himself forwards, cutting across the empty space between him and the black skull. Before the floor boss could react, Bell shot past, leaving behind a slash that cut across both eyes of the monster Rex. Losing its vision, Eudeus roared in pain and anger, its arms thrashing around, unknowingly crushing many Spartoi. Nice job, Bell. Elise praised. Bell rebounded off the wall and elegantly landed next to Elise and MIA. Sneaking a peek behind him, he could see Chloe, Anya and Lunwa still fighting, with countless Spartoi non-stop. My turn to shine. Can't have my beautiful Renard hogging all the glory. Otherwise, he won't get to see the amazing Elise in action. And I must do this so as to show him how incredible I can be. Only through that will I capture his heart. Before the red-haired girl could continue any further, she was promptly smacked by MIA, who shouted at her to get a move on. Geez, don't make me look bad next to Bell. The girl grumbled before activating her fire enchantment, just as the monster Rex shot one of its hands towards them. Instead of moving to dodge it, Elise charged straight towards it and speared at the hand with her flaming sword. Bell was surprised to see her charge like that, but was not afraid to let her do so. He trusted Elise knew what she was doing. His surprise, however, reached a new level when, upon contact with the sword of justice, cracks expanded over the giant hand of Eudeus before it shattered and Elise's charge broke through. Ha ha ha, see that, my love? Elise, pay attention. Hearing Mia's shout, the girl looked back and spotted the other hand heading towards her. She prepared to meet the attack head-on, but it never came, as instead a fluffy white wall smacked the hand away from her. Hey! Yes, I saw that very well, my love. And you truly are the most beautiful and fantastic. The girl turned to see Bell standing next to her with a heartwarming smile. Unnoticed by her, Bell was once again surrounded by a set of mini-moons, granting him a massive boost in power. Judging by the strength of the effect, Bell guessed that it must have been night on the surface, because he could feel power coursing through his veins. Hey, you two. Stop flirting and focus on killing the old baldy. The two turned to MIA and nodded, albeit not without sporting a bright red blush on their faces. The ruby eyes of the Renard then focused on the magic stone of the monster. Unlike the other monsters, it was in plain sight and very much undefended. It was by no means easy. The bones of the rib cage were thick and nearly unbreakable, but compared to the Amphisbaena and the Goliath, the moment that the defense is broken, getting To the magic stone seemed much easier, as long as you don't mess up and end up hitting the bones, that is. Hey Elise, can you shoot me towards the monster? The girl looked at him with a raised eyebrow before grinning madly. Of course, I can do anything for you. The Renard only smiled and placed a soft kiss on her forehead. Behind them, the staff of the hostess couldn't help but groan as they defended the couple from the hordes of Sparto. While they had their moment, Elise lowered herself in position as Belle placed a foot on the flat side of her sword. Receiving a nod from the Renard, Elise pushed forwards and swung. With all of her strength, Belle was sent flying forwards, right towards the hand of the monster. Rex. The girls watched while the Renard missile rapidly approached its seemingly imminent end. Just before Belle could be hit, though, the boy dissolved into a mist of ice, accelerating at even greater speeds. While before it seemed like he would crash into the palm, the white mist shot past, right in between the bony fingers and straight towards the heart of Eudeus. Just before he arrived and made contact, he returned back into its normal form and, with enhanced strength from his skill's effect, the boy swung down on the magic stone. The large crystal fell in two different directions as the floor boss roared. The mighty roar of pain, dimmed to a screech before dying down to a growl. Then came silence, a symbol that the monster Rex was dead. Yeah, let's go, Belle. The red-haired captain jumped on the Renard, resulting in a cute yelp from the white-haired boy. MIA came from behind with the rest of her staff and slapped him on the back. Good job, boy. Though you'd better tone down the flirting. Save it for when you are home. That caused both Belle and Elise to blush, while the waitresses all laughed at their expense. Apologies, my lord. All our plans to kill the Scarlet Harnel have failed. The person who spoke had a feminine voice, but it was devoid of any emotion. Cold and distant, it spoke to another mysterious being. The adventurers, the suicide bombers and Eudeus seemed to be no match for them. As expected of the captain of the Astraea Familia and the former captain of the Freya Familia. Though I wonder who that Renard is. A man spoke whilst hiding in the shadows. His body, like that of the woman, was clad in a black cloak, his face covered by a mask, its gaze never losing sight of the white Renard and the red-haired adventurer. My apologies for my incompetence. As for the Renard, he is a new level 4 of the Takamikazuchi Familia. Apparently there is a rumor going in the guild that he will level up to 5 on this expedition. I see. Anyways, don't worry about that. We are dealing with 2 first-class adventurers as well as 4 second-class adventurers. Yes, we could send Revis, but even she is not strong enough as of now. A single level 6 would be enough to defeat our little tool. She's too weak. For now we must let her grow. We can't send a demispirit yet either. It's not the time either for that. On the other hand, I do have one last resort for now. One last challenge. Somehow I wish I could see them die painfully, yet at the same time I want to see them succeed. Just so that they can despair on the final act. But perhaps we can make use of the Renard. The god unleashed its divinity, making the dungeon react. It was known that the abyss despised gods and would do anything to remove their existence. Thus the dungeon rumbled as it began taking action to remove the undesired guest. The dungeon shook and it screamed. Its wrath could be felt through its trembling. The monster Rex had just been defeated, but the dungeon cared not. It was a living system, and when angered it would react in unpredictable ways. In this case it summoned another Eudeus. Bigger, stronger, and more resilient. What is going on? Lunoir shouted, never having heard about the dungeon acting like this. Everyone gather around. We don't know what's going on. Elise shouted at everyone, she too never having experienced this kind of behavior from the dungeon. But she didn't let panic take over, nor did the others. Their attention was then drawn to the place where Eudeus had died. The ground cracked and a black skeletal hand emerged. While Eudeus was grayish-black, this skeletal hand looked raven black. Following the hand was the arm, which it then its other arm. The 2 hands came crashing down with so much force that it sent a shockwave across the floor. Using its arms, it pulled the rest of its body out of the body. A nasty and enraged-looking Eudeus with a raven body rose. What was shocking was to see that unlike the usual Eudeus, this black version seemed to be bigger, and now that It rose it. Didn't seem skeletal at all. No, rather it felt like looking at a giant stone statue of a human. Its arms not scrawny but large and robust. And as if it wasn't enough that most of the weaknesses that the regular Udeus had weren't there anymore, it also appeared to be wearing armor. Thick stone slabs that covered arms, shoulders and chest. Its head was covered by a thick cloak and its face invisible. Only the ominous red eyes glowed through the void that was its face, and in the place of his pair of horns he wore a crown made from its horns. But the truly shocking part came next, when the ground shook once again and the monster Rex rose to its feet. What the hell? Nyat in Name of Freya is happening. The group stared as the giant now towered over them even more than before. Its head nearly reaching all the way to the ceiling. The monster growled before turning to the wall next to him and punching it. Its fist struck right through the wall, but when it came back out, the hand now held a massive cleaver-looking blade. Lothric, Elise and the rest of the girls looked as Bell seemingly analyzed the enemy to verify his own thoughts. Lothric. It's an ancient ruined nation from before the age of the gods, a place said to be ruled by lords of Cinder. One of said Lord of Cinders was Yorm the Giant. And you're saying this monster that suddenly spawned resembles him? Well, it definitely matches the stories and pictures I've seen. Then you can guess its weakness. Bell turned to Lunoir and nodded, but before he could explain, the giant let out a blood-chilling battle cry before it charged forwards with its cleaver. The group, however, was shocked by the speed of the giant. Before they had time to react, the massive monster swung, its blade sending everyone flying. Everyone landed with earth-shattering force, causing several pillars in the room to collapse. What the hell? It's so fast. Bell was the first to move as he was the one closest to the giant and therefore the first targeted. Just in time, the Renard used his ability to turn into mist and dodge the blade as it completely devastated the area he was sitting on just a moment before. MIA, we cannot risk fighting this monster any more or any longer than now. The owner of the hostess turned to Bell and nodded. But we can't just run, boy. It will tear us apart the moment we show our back. That's why I'll end it in one go. Elise, Lunoir, Anya, Chloe, and MIA all got the message instantly. Go for it then. Before Bell had even begun the chant, a colossal magic circle appeared beneath Bell's feet. Elise looked with wide eyes at the spell Bell began to cast. The level of magic converging around Bell and the size of the magic circle was beyond anything she had seen before. Not even Reveria matched Bell in this aspect in the eyes of Elise. Looking closer, she also noticed that the massive magic was incredibly complex and that it was comprised of many more smaller magic circles within it. As the chant progressed, the circles expanded until the radius could line 30 people in it. Layer upon layer of magic circles appeared. The first one below Bell's feet, the second above his head, the third just above the second one, and so on until there were 10. The display of the spell was worthy of the mighty power that the majestic magic was about to demonstrate. Order has fallen, and with it has justice. The lands are now wrought with rampant malice. The monster Rex moved to strike Bell, but was intercepted by Elise and MIA, who used all their strength to counter the attack, just barely managing to block it. Too long has it gone, the suffering of the innocent, for I have been naively munificent. Chloe threw half of her remaining potions at the monster's head only to be shocked when they had no effect on the beast. My love for this world has long ago waned. Thou existence is this realm's bane. Anya activated her skill and used all her strength to launch the golden spear, hitting the monster square in the chest, only for the spear to completely bounce off the chest armor. It is mine duty as the guardian of order to act. Divine retribution is what mine decision enact. Lunoir moved fast and struck the feet of the monster only for her fists to rebound, without even denting the stone giant. I feel not the pain as mine actions this world it destroys. The countless eons have left me of my emotions devoid. Having sensed the danger of the spell and getting annoyed by the adventurers, barely scratching him, it swung its cleaver, sending everyone flying again. With an aggressive roar, it charged straight at Bell as the magic circles glowed brighter than ever. But what caught everyone's attention, adventurers, monster, cloaked beings, and dungeon, was the bright glow that emanated from Bel's tail. Following his instincts, Bel unfurled his tails, revealing the ethereal sight of the 9 flickering tails. As the magic power charged, the tails began pulsing from base to tip. Each second the pulsing grew stronger, brighter, and faster. At the tips of the now glowing tails, spheres of light brilliantly shone like stars. By mine will have I now chosen to mend. The arrogation of mankind now comes to an end. The sound that could be heard as the magic power converged terrified even the dungeon. The sound of the energy gathering was a foretelling to the destructive power that was about to be unleashed. The tails stopped pulsing, instead now glowing brightly, while Bel aimed all 9 tails at the monster. At that moment the giant knew it had no chance. Its end was imminent. From there, hiding, Spot the god and woman watched, fascinated by the almost divine glow. The adventurers on the other hand took cover, knowing to expect one hell of a spell to be unleashed. The 9 spheres glowed more luminous than ever before as they were about to be released. Bel's rubellite eyes looked at the monster with a gaze that would have frozen any second tier adventurer with fear. Tenrai no Hakaisha. 9 beams shot out from each tail. The white light that filled everyone's vision was blinding. Not only their eyesight, but everyone was also left confused as they could no longer hear anything, as if nothing around them existed. Like everything around them had perished. The ray sliced the monster apart from its sheer strength, but that was not the end. Before anyone could register what happened or recover their eyesight, a massive explosion detonated as the spell came to an end. The explosion blasted everything around the area and completely leveled the entire floor. All pillars and boulders were cleared out, leaving behind a flat plain. Where the monster once was, now there was a crater that expanded 2 floors below their current floor. The explosion had torn through a total of 4 floors, 2 below, 2 above. All monsters across the 39th floor all the way up to the 35th floor had been vanquished. Elise looked stupefied at the scene before her, having survived only after she, along with the rest of the party, took refuge behind the Renard, who had wrapped them in his tails. That unleashed the spell. The god of Bel's previous familiar was not joking. This spell was beyond ludicrously powerful. Bel too stood with his mouth hanging open, no words coming out of his mouth at the results of his actions. MIA looked around to see if the dungeon would react in some manner, but there was nothing but silence greeting them, while ferocious and merciless, always baring its fangs at you when you less expect it. The dungeon wasn't a petty being. It knew when to back down. It saw Bel's power and acknowledged it, hence deciding to admit defeat and let the adventurers walk away victorious. It was an exception it made for Bel, for normally it would unleash an even more terrifying monster known as the Juggernaut. But not today. Today the adventurers earned their rest. It seems like we're in the clear. You good boy? Yes, but the spell took out all of my mind. I probably won't be casting much of anything else today. Honestly, I am surprised Naya. With how strong it was, I ought it would. Sayorze meowed down. No kidding. This spell is hilarious. Anya nodded in agreement with both Chloe's and Lunoir's statements. Try not to use it again, Bel. Wouldn't want half of Orario to suddenly disappear one day. The Renard pouted as Elise poked fun at Bel. Mao, don't joke about that, Elise. I wouldn't do that. I know you wouldn't. Let's all head back. It's been a pretty eventful day after all. If our camp is still there, that is. Bel might have flattened it along with the rest of the floor. Bel paled while the girls allowed themselves to relax and giggle at the Renards desperation. It would be a waste if he blasted all of the drop items they had gathered after all. The party then retreated back the way they had come, not noticing the duo that watched them. From afar, just before leaving, Bel noticed a glint coming from the ashes of the irregular boss. He rapidly picked it up before catching up with the others. Oh, damn, that nearly killed us. Huff, huff, ha ha, ha ha ha. Amazing. Such destructive power. How marvelous. Ha 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 ha. Did you see that? A divine image. Like the legends of old. A fox with 9 tails that lays waste to the lands. Ha ha ha. The woman was sat by her god and watched as the delirious deity gained a new object of interest. the source of power that could annihilate anything that stood in its path. She, along with the god, were covered with dust and cuts. The blast alone had nearly killed them, then as if that was not enough, boulders as big as buildings fell down and almost crushed them. She was a creature and a high-leveled one at that, yet she had been moments away from meeting her end. How her god managed to survive that with just his human body was a mystery to her. That was dangerous, Enio-sama. I'd say it was pure luck that we got out of that alive. We should be more careful. You are indeed right, my dear Ein. That should have totally killed us there. We just happened to be lucky. It seems fate has chosen to support my endeavor. Now, if that couldn't kill them, then nothing can. However, we can always target someone else to harm them. You said he was a new member of the Takamikazuchi familia, right? Find them and give them a little gift. No need to kill them. We would run the risk of getting too exposed, but let them experience the despair of the dungeon. The woman nodded before turning to look at the retreating figure of the Renard and hoped to never have to face him in a fight. Even her strongest barrier was completely blown away. How she was still alive, she herself had no idea. Unknown to the group of adventurers on the 37th floor, the explosion was felt throughout the entire dungeon. Not only that, but Orario too felt the explosion shake at the foundations of its city, causing widespread panic to spread through the city. Loki, Astrea, Ganesha, and Freya Familia were soon after ordered to investigate and set up a meeting in order to discuss what to do. The gods of the previously mentioned familiars all rapidly met up with their executives and captains present. Why do I feel like this is Belle's doing? Everyone turned to Astrea with a shocked look before the goddess herself realized she said that out of her intuition. She didn't know why or how, but something told her that the Renard was somehow involved, and thus was her captain, who was now down with him. Belle stood staring blankly at their camp, which was now set up right next to a massive hole that had torn through the floor. Totally not Belle's spell. Luckily, the drop items and all their resources were fine. The hole had just barely scratched the outer perimeter of their camp. Unfortunately, there was one thing that got blown apart with the explosion. And that one thing just happened to be Belle's own tent. Behind him, the girls were all giggling at the Renard's misfortune, having long gotten over the fact that Belle had 9 tails. Belle had explained to them on their way back, just like he had done with MIA back when he first got hired. Well, it would seem like you have to sleep on the floor today, boy. MIA gave him a slap on the back. Well, he seeked SS sleep with me. My tent has space for T2. Elise blushed brightly while her hand fidgeted as she proposed an alternative to Belle's current predicament. The red-haired girl was met with silence, and her face turned the same shade of her hair as everyone stared at her with wide eyes. It's late, let's go make lunch, girls. MIA led her staff away, grabbing Anya by the collar as she didn't move of her own volition. As Belle saw them leave, he turned back to face Elise, his ears twitching continuously. I guess we see C could do that. The Renard's tail swished shyly as he accepted her offer. It would have been rude to decline. Anyways, and it was a good excuse to spend some more time with the love of his life. As he answered, the two then stood there quietly staring at their own hands. The seconds turned to minutes, and it would have continued if not for MIA calling them over to eat. The two awkwardly made their way to the rest of the group where lunch was being served. The delicious treat that MIA served helped relieve the two of their awkwardness. But even that couldn't solve everything, and as lunch came to an end, they still couldn't look each other in the eyes without a massive blush making its way on their faces. And like that, the rest of the day went. During their lunch, for the next few hours, as they slayed monsters right and left, and even once they got back and relaxed. All the way until night came and everyone returned to their own tents for the night, except for Lunhua, who stood guard far away from the two, practically leaving them alone. So, we should go to sleep. Yeah. Elise and Belle just stood there for a moment before Elise made the first move and entered her tent, followed by Belle as he noticed her moving. The two sat on the small blanket. The two would use as a bed for the night. The two then began changing into their night wear, never turning around as their eyes was fixed on the spot in front of them. It went like that for a couple of minutes before Elise, being the older one, decided she should be the one making the first move. The girl turned around and was met with a wall of 9 fluffy tails. Bell. See, could you turn around? The Renard yelped quietly before slowly turning around, his rubellite gaze focusing on Elise's emerald eyes. Their faces lit up by the single lantern inside the tent, providing what little light it could. Before they knew it, the two leaned their foreheads against each other. We really are a silly couple, aren't we? I think cute is more adequate, Belle. As silence returned, the two couldn't suppress their instincts to lean in, their lips gently pressed against each other, a kiss full of love and tenderness. The two hugged each other as they stayed there, sat on the blanket with their lips locked in position. Slowly Elise pushed Belle down on his back, never breaking the kiss. Her nightwear, being thin, left little to the boy's imagination. Belle. Elise leaned back, interrupting the kiss for the first time since it had started. The two stared at each other for a moment before Elise placed her head between Belle's neck and shoulder. Good night, Elise. Good night, Belle. His 9 tails wrapped around Elise as their arms tightly embraced one another. Belle's face rested on Elise's red hair as they fell in a deep slumber. What was that? No idea, but let's keep our guard up. Are you sure we shouldn't head back? Whatever that was, it could be dangerous. Answering the question was the leader of the group. Whatever that was, it came from the deep floors, where Belle's expedition currently is. We are not even close to his level and we're already going to give up. Do you know, Mikoto, Chigusa? I asked Takemikazuchi about how powerful Belle looked to him and he told me that even if I was level 5 and him level 4, I would still lose the fight. I don't expect to match him in combat prowess, not with him likely becoming a level 5, but to become strong enough to support him and help him. And I expect the same of the rest of our familia, to do our best to help Belle. The purple-clad Mikoto and Chigusa stared at their captain alongside the rest of their familia. They all remembered as the Renard took on the expedition without them, truly showing how weak they were. They were too weak, they knew that, but it didn't make it any easier to swallow the fact. Ukadono is right. We must press on. What kind of samurai, what kind of warrior would run away from a challenge? The Takemikazuchi familia shouted in unison before pressing forwards, deeper in the dungeon towards the 20th floor. The group of warriors unknowingly diving into the trap that their enemy had laid for them. Belle and Elise had gradually got accustomed to sleeping together following the last 2 days of their expedition. During those final days, the party of first and second class adventurers had mercilessly slaughtered hundreds of monsters, eventually finding all the required drop items. That's the last one. Phew. And with that we've met all requirements. Lunhua spoke as she sat down on a nearby boulder and relaxed, finally having finished farming the monsters of the 32nd floor and having at last met the guild's quota. Then we head back home. MIA declared loudly with a smile. Luckily the group had packed up their camp and were heading up whilst hunting monsters when they realized that they had gathered all needed drop items, thus their time in the dungeon coming to a conclusion. Getting a nod from everyone, the party scrapped their plan to set up camp on the 24th floor and instead decided to head all the way back to the safe haven that was the 18th floor. There they'd set up camp for the night before returning to the surface the day after. They didn't know at the moment of their decision, but their choice would end up saving the members of the Takemikazuchi familia from facing a devastating defeat. A turning point, as it would later reveal that the battle the Takemikazuchi familia faced before reinforcements arrived would benefit them greatly despite the near despair it had brought to them. What's going on? This is bad. Everyone group up. Prepare for battle. Arata and Hiroto panicked while Mikoto and Uka gave orders. Asuka and Chigusa quickly joined the group as they formed a circle, their weapons at the ready as swarms of monsters rushed towards them. The horde of level 2 and 3 monsters had surrounded the party and was looking eager to devour them. What caught their attention, however, was the monster leading the horde. A massive lizard man, nearly twice as big as the average size. Its scales of vivid violet, its normally cream. Skin now a blood-red color. It was unlike any lizard man they experienced. Adventurer's head. Seen. What was even more shocking was that it wore armor made from the bodies of obsidian soldiers, famous for its incredibly tough skin, over its body. In its hand, the lizard man held an imposing raven scimitar. The weapon wielded by the monster was nearly an arm in length, and it radiated a sense of danger, as if it would cut through anything that stood in its way. Is that a lizard man? The pure fear and confusion was evidently displayed on Asuka's face as she questioned the identity of the monster. Next to her, Chigusa answered the question with a small nod of her head, she too, not knowing what to make of their current situation. It was a truly terrible situation. Surrounded on all sides, in a cubicle room that had only one entrance. Of course, the lizard man stood right in the entrance, preventing anyone from running away. Its blood-red eyes glowed menacingly as they zeroed in on the Takemikazuchi. Familiar. Rah! The lizard man let out a powerful battle cry as it raised its sword to the sky. Hearing that, the monsters around obeyed and began the attack on the Takemikazuchi familiar. The first wave was easily wiped out by a swing of Uka's axe, the second by the swift movements of Mikoto, and the third by the combined efforts of Chigusa, Asuka, Arata, and Hiroto. The group did its best to hold out, but even with the 6 high-leveled adventurers, there were just too many monsters for them to deal with. That was without considering that all the monsters were from the 15th floor to the 20th floor. That meant there were many monsters that could match a level 3 adventurers in a fight. Asuka, Hiroto, and Arata had to back off against some of the stronger monsters due to their lower level. Chigusa, as well, didn't take the fights head-on, being more of an archer than a vanguard. As things were going, it didn't seem like they'd last long. Uka looked around, while everyone fought and felt the panic and despair grip his heart. As the captain and brother figure of his fellow familiar members, he couldn't let them die. He wouldn't let them die. Yet, the situation seemed to become more desperate by the minute. Losing concentration, however, came to bite him back. Literally. While looking elsewhere, a dungeon worm shot out of the ground, biting the captain on his dominant hand. Uka shouted in pain, dropping the axe while at the same time causing everyone fighting to focus on him. Uka's vision then turned black as he was knocked out by a Minotaurus punch to the face, sending him flying to the center of the formation. In that instant, the whole familiar's formation fell apart. Chigusa, looking down at her captain, didn't notice the firebird which shot a fireball at her. In an attempt to save her, Mikoto jumped in the way. The blast singed her as she was sent flying to the ground. With the 2 strongest members down, the others quickly began succumbing. The remaining 4 members dragged Mikoto back to the center of their circle and tried their best to defend them. The young samurai, however, didn't give up. Mikoto sat up and leaned against a rock while she clasped her hands together and started chanting. I pray to you, the god of war who destroys all things. Lead me from the highest heaven. Grant my puny mortal body the almighty power of the divine. Rescue them, light of purification, sword of crushing evil. Sweep, sword of suppression, sacred sword of conquest. Descend from the heavens and rule over the earth. Shinbu Tusei. Futsuno Matema. As she finished the chant, a pink blade materialized above the monsters. The point descended until touched the ground, a magic circle expanding out from the tip. As the magic circle finished growing bigger, all the monsters within the area fell to their knees, unable to move as a gravity barrier held them down. Mikoto held the barrier in place while the other members, minus the captain, killed the monsters that had been outside the range of effect of the spell. The spell was big enough to block their half side of the room from the entire horde of monsters coming from the entrance. This cut off the reinforcements and allowed the others to have a much easier time fighting off the monsters that were too close for the barrier to catch. From the back of his army of monsters, it watched as the gravity barrier held his army in place. The lizard man, however, wasn't just stronger, it was also more intelligent. It growled in anger before noticing that the spell didn't go all the way up to the ceiling. A grin made its way on its face at the realization. How much longer can you hold it, Mikoto? A few minutes. Asuka, Chigusa, Hiroto, and Arata hurried to kill the remaining monsters before the barrier would collapse. Mikoto, from her laid-down position and with her concentration all focused on maintaining the spell, didn't see the lizard man crawling on the ceiling, moving across the battlefield. Too late did Mikoto spot a metallic glint sailing through the air towards her. The black scimitar struck the girl, spearing right through the right shoulder and lodging into the stone behind Mikoto's joint, pinning her to the rock. Mikoto. The group had heard both her scream and the impact of the scimitar cracking the stone rock. Even so, Mikoto persisted and tried to keep the spell active. It's not going to last. Mikoto squeezed her warning out as she struggled with all her might to keep the gravity barrier on. She fought the pain of the weapon in her shoulder, but combined with the resistance she met from all the monsters under the effect of her barrier, it proved too much for her to handle with her injury. The spell vanished and the barrier shattered like a glass pane. The lizard man let go of the ceiling and landed before the young samurai. It grinned madly before grabbing the hilt of its weapon and pulling the blade out Mikoto, causing her to scream as she felt the searing pain of the sword leaving her arm and tearing through her skin. The four standing members of the Takamikazuchi familia could only watch as they were suddenly met with a wall of monsters charging at them. Meanwhile, Uka had also awoken, just in time to see the lizard man standing over Mikoto with its scimitar now raised over its head, ready to finish off the adventurer. Mikoto. No. The samurai looked up with fear in her eyes as the monster seemed gleeful to see her expression. It raised its raven scimitar and brought it down, aiming to cut her down straight through the center and split the body in two. Mikoto could only shut her eyes close as she imagined this would be her end. Is this how it ends? I wasn't able to find Haruheim Dono, nor be of help to Bell Dono. I won't be able to do anything for my familia nor become strong enough to support the orphanage either. The party was on their way back from the expedition, and it was around the time they crossed the 22nd floor that Bell's ear twitched. The Renard boy kept on walking silently, with Elise and the other girls laughing and chatting right behind him. His gaze, on the other hand, turned to the ceiling as he curiously wondered what it was that he heard. Futsuno Matema. Bell's ears stood up as he could hear it faintly, like a tiny droplet falling to the surface amidst a battle. A spell he had seen during his time training with Mikoto. Before anyone knew it, the walk turned into a dash, a sudden burst of strength that emanated from Bell's foot propelled him at speeds that even a top-level 5 would be hard-pressed to keep up with. Elise and the others were startled when the Renard suddenly took off but didn't hesitate to follow. To any monster on the floor, it would look like a white arrow just darted through. The unfortunate monsters that happened to be in the way, however, had no chance to even react before they turned into dust. The white dart then turned to a ball of icy mist that suddenly accelerated to a speed that a level 2 wouldn't be able to pick up. Behind him, Elise and MIA were the closest, with the staff a little bit behind them. With the head start he had, the two level 6 lost track of the Renard the moment he took on the mist form and simply resorted to following the trail of frost left behind. The adventurers did not notice in that moment that the temperature in the room suddenly fell by a few degrees. Before the blade could strike Mikoto, a white orb flew into the room at record speed. The lizard man spotted the white misty orb fly right in between his sword and the adventurer girl. The Renard then appeared out of the mist, meeting the swing of the lizard man with one his own. The strength behind Bell's strike being much superior sent the scimitar rebounding back. Unable to keep up with the boy's speed, the lizard man didn't see the kick that struck it in the stomach and sent its body flying back to its starting point by the entrance. Mikoto opened her eyes the moment she heard the blade being blocked and watched as Bell stood over her. His tail glowed white before he twirled and casted the spell he had been chanting whilst traveling at a high speed. Yukusho Sumetsu. Unlike the first time he had cast it, this time, instead of one snowflake, there were 3 each. Snowflake was unleashed in different directions, completely wiping out the remaining monsters in the room. Bell-san. The 4 members that were still standing all called out to the white-haired adventurer in amazement, having witnessed his power. Mikoto too watched in awe as the Renard wiped out the entire army of monsters with a single spell. "Are you okay?" Bell looked at her worriedly as he pulled out a potion and applied it to her shoulder. Mikoto couldn't stop the blush growing on her face. It was just like in those stories that Haraheim had loved to tell her about all those years back. A knight coming to save the princess in distress. "I am okay. Thank you, B. Beldono. What about you guys?" Bell looked at the members of the Takamikazuchi, whose bodies were covered with scratches, and their looks told of how exhausted they were. "We're mostly fine." The Renard then turned to the captain of the Familiar, who was looking at the ground in shame and frustration for his weakness. "Uka, everyone makes mistakes. But this was my mistake, and it could have gotten all of them killed. Enough, Uka. Not now. We're still in the dungeon after all. We can talk about what things you did wrong and who's to blame after we get you out of here. For now, focus on staying alive and keeping your Familiar alive." "All right." The captain shut his mouth and silently gave a slight nod. "Thank you, Beldono, for saving us." The Renard gave a gentle smile and nodded before his twitching ear turned his attention back to the lizard man getting up. Bell handed Mikoto a couple of potions and got up to confront the irregular lizard man. "Use the potions on the others. I'll finish the irregular in the meantime." Bell only took one step before Uka made a request. "Please wait." Bell turned to Uka with a raised eyebrow. "I know this is a pretty selfish request, particularly after our pathetic fight against it a few moments ago, but I would like to ask you to not intervene and let us deal with the monster. The monster is at least mid-level 4. You think you can beat it? I can only dream about beating that monster alone, but with all of us together I believe we can kill it. As adventurers and members of the Takamikazuchi, we need to prove ourselves worthy of those names. Not only that, but we will never grow stronger if we don't push our limits and break past them. We want to become a Familiar that can compete even against the top Familiars of Orario, to support the orphanage back home, to prove the strength of the far Eastern warriors and to honor Takamikazuchi-sama. It may sound like a dream, but we can only try, and we won't get anywhere if we run from every fight that seems impossible to win. We are members of the Takamikazuchi, Familiar, way warriors and samurai. Our pride is our honor and righteousness, to help and protect those who need help." The Renard watched the captain with an emotionless stare. It told not what he felt, and made it impossible to guess what he was thinking. The other members of the Familiar watched worriedly, wondering what the Renard was going to say. Bell, on the other hand, was thinking thoroughly about what Uka said. There was no doubt in his mind that what the captain of the Familiar said was true. Bell too had always fought impossible fights where all odds were against him, only to prevail in the end. It was true that he had pushed himself far beyond his limits every time, and it would be hypocritical of Bell to impede them. Not only that, but they seemed to have heroic aspirations just like him. "All right, there are no monsters to get in the way. Just you and the irregular." It took everyone a moment to register what he said, but once they did, the Familiar smiled, knowing that he trusted them and believed in them. They had to show him that they could overcome this hurdle so as to not fail him or Takamikazuchi. "Let's do this, everyone." Uka and the rest of the Takamikazuchi Familiar healed and armed themselves. The lizard man had recovered by the powerful hit that Bell had delivered and was looking around to try and understand what had happened to all the other monsters under his command. What it observed was dead monsters across the entire room, its plan ruined. And while it had gained intelligence, it had also developed other emotions. Like Uka before, the monster began to panic. The feelings were overpowering its decisions, and it turned to bitter wrath, focusing them on the adventurers. The lizard man stared with seething rage at the group of adventurers that it thought to be easy pickings and were now the cause of its distress. Rara. Uka and the rest of the Takamikazuchi Familiar wasted no time and deployed into a formation. Chigusa and Hiroto positioned themselves at opposite ends far behind the vanguard line with their bows at the ready. The front line was composed by Uka, wielding his axe, Asuka with her spear and Arata with a katana. Between the vanguard and the support was Mikoto, who was preparing her gravity spell once again. The monster charged, intending to break through the front line. The violet beast, however, was forced to jump as an arrow lodged itself where it was running to. Spear and axe. Then shot towards the lizard man that could only block the attack, landing on its back from the strength of the impact. With that chance, even Arata managed to strike the downed monster. Though it wasn't a deep cut, it tore across the monster's chest from the right shoulder to the left hip. Before the monster could cleave him in half, Arata retreated, like the level 2 adventurer. Instead of pushing their attacks, the familiar fell back into formation, taking a defensive stance. The lizard man had barely enough time to get to its feet before it had to dodge another arrow. The formation was starting to annoy the monster, and it showed as it targeted the archers in the back. What no one was expecting was for the raven beast to unleash a fireball at Chigusa, who, despite dodging, the flames grazed her arm, slightly burning her. What? The Takamikazuchi familiar was shocked by the sudden move, but Mikoto didn't let that interrupt her chant. The lizard man took a step before the gravity barrier was once again activated, holding it down. With only a single target, the area of effect was reduced. 2. Increase the strength of the barrier. The strengthened barrier forced the monster down, but not quite bringing it down to its knees. No matter how much Mikoto tried, the monster was too powerful to knock it down. In addition, the downside to the barrier was that you could not attack someone inside the barrier, as the gravity barrier would affect anything that enters its effective range, allies, and spells alike. Uka, Asuka, and Arata spread out around the monster, surrounding it while it was immobilized. As the three got in position, Mikoto released the barrier before moving out of everyone's sight, using her ninjutsu skills. As soon as the monster was freed, it stood up and roared defiantly. It didn't wait a moment to swing its scimitar in a wide arc towards the closest adventurer. That adventurer being Uka. The man foolishly tried to block the attack, only to be sent crashing onto his back. Moving to protect her captain, Asuka intercepted the monster with her spear, thrusting at it from the side. The lizard man, however, saw her coming with the tail of his eye and dodged before kicking her away. Arata barely had the time react before the tail slammed into his stomach, landing him right next to his captain, who was now getting up. Behind them, Hiroto and Chigusa kept on providing support, unleashing volleys of arrows. One of the arrows shot by Chigusa finally struck the monster, lodging into the side of the lizard man, between its scales, causing it screech in pain. Its blood-red eyes glared at the small archer before blasting a fire breath at her. Chigusa rolled to the side, avoiding the flame that melted the rock she was standing on. Out of the shadows and into its blind spot, Mikoto silently swung the blade in a fast arc, going for the neck of the scaly beast. It took Mikoto by surprise when the armored tail swatted the blade, deflecting it away from its neck, causing it to cut only empty air. The ninja, however, was quick to back away as the scimitar carved into the air where she stood moments before. Even so, she did not fully dodge, as the raven blade left a shallow cut on the ninja's left arm. It didn't seem like either of the sides were gaining any ground. The Takamikazuchi, with its superior numbers, could try to take it slow, making it a battle of attrition, but that wouldn't guarantee a victory, or at least one without casualties. Even because it wasn't clear who would prevail in a contest of endurance. But more importantly, Uka was getting impatient, something that whilst it worked out this time, it would come to bite him back and get him into trouble, far more than he could imagine. Damn. Change of plans. Chigusa, pass me my shield. The small black-haired girl hesitated for a moment before she threw the large, human-sized shield at the captain of the familiar. HAA. Uka then recklessly charged the black lizard with its shield. The others, however, didn't miss out on what Uka had planned. They charged from different directions, aiming to overwhelm the monster. Uka was the first to arrive, blocking the scimitar with his shield. The large man followed it with a punch to the lizardman's face before raising his shield. Again, Uka's face soon showed disbelief as he blocked another swing of the monster. Only this time, the scimitar cut into the shield, going halfway down, nearly cutting into his hand. Luckily, this helped Uka's plan of keeping the monster immobilized. White Erita and Asuka moved on each flank and thrusted their weapons into the reptile's legs. The lizard man roared in pain before swatting the of them away and using its strength to push against the shield. Uka poured all his strength and shouted defiantly, trying to keep the monster pinned. Thankfully, Mikoto brought it to an end, jumping over the large captain. The girl performed a front flip before using her sword to pierce straight through the monster's scaly skull. It screeched before slowly falling silent. Its red eyes ceased glowing as its life came to an end. Mikoto sheathed her katana and breathed a sigh of relief. Everyone lowered their weapons, arrows going back in their quivers. We did it. The group celebrated while behind them, Bell stood watching, Elise, MIA and the staff next to him. Upon arriving, they were greeted with the Takamikazuchi familiar fighting. They were going to intervene before Bell stopped them, explaining to them why they shouldn't interfere. They did it. That they did. Bell and Elise waited for their euphoric cheers to end. When the group of level 3 and 2 adventurers finally calmed down, MIA provided them with potions to heal their wounds. The staff congratulated the adventurers for their achievement, which the Takamikazuchi familiar received with blushes. Congratulations, everyone. Elise smiled brightly as she stood, leaning her body on Bell's own frame. Despite the moment, Uka, Arata, and Hiroto couldn't help feel a little jealous. No, they were positively seething with jealousy. They had tried so hard to get a girlfriend, Hiroto, and Arata had even asked Chigusa and Mikoto respectively, which obviously was received with a disappointing rejection. If only Uka knew that had he been the one asking Chigusa, he'd be in the same position as Bell. Yet the Renard had appeared one day, and in less than 100th of the time they spent, he landed himself one of the world's top beauties, without even trying. At that, damn, how does he do that? The three couldn't help but wonder. Perhaps they should ask him. Yeah, we should definitely ask. From afar, a cloaked person kept on watching. A click of the tongue escaped her as she watched the adventurers. While she wasn't meant to kill them, the plan was to bring them to despair. But even that plan seemed to have failed miserably. Oh well. The shadow-clad figure shrugged, deciding to not care anymore. There was no need to kill them, and she certainly wasn't about to fight the Renard and 2 level 6 adventurers alone. Even for her, that would just be a suicide mission. Upon reaching the 18th floor, the Takamikazuchi familiar along with Bell and Elise split off from the staff of the hostess. MIA and her girls left the bags with the drop items and magic stones to the group before heading out first, under the cover of night. The joint expeditionary force, now only Bell and Elise, and the Takamikazuchi familiar group, rested for the night on the 18th floor, where Bell drew the jealous stares of his comrades as he shared a tent with Elise. The night went by quietly without irregular monsters appearing any further. Following the next morning, the group packed up before making a speedy return to the surface. Made much easier as most monsters stayed away from the group. Upon reaching the surface, the remaining group met a waiting Takamikazuchi along with Astrea and her familiar, who had been informed by the hostess of their return. The girls of the Astrea familiar rushed to their captain to greet her, having missed her cheery attitude. Welcome back, Elise. The girls soon started sharing stories and giggling while Astrea and Takamikazuchi approached Bell. There, the two asked what happened down in the dungeon. Particularly interested was Astrea, as she was still on the case on behalf of the guild. There Bell told them the entire story, from how he defeated the Amphisbena, to how they beat Udius, before beating an irregular version and later meeting the Takamikazuchi familiar their way back. Finally finishing the story with Mikoto killing the monster. Astrea and Takamikazuchi were shocked to discover that so much had happened on their expedition. While the Far Eastern god went to check on his children, Astrea stood there, deep in thought. The Renard swished his tail slowly as he tilted his head, quietly wondering what was troubling the goddess' mind. The guardian of justice must have noticed the Renard staring at her as she turned her attention back to him. Elise is right. He really is adorable. Wait, what? Oh, heavens, what am I thinking? Curious Belle. The white-haired adventurer simply shrugged. Just wondering what was troubling your mind, Kamisama. Her face turned serious as she let out her worries to the Renard. It's about Evelys. With them on the rise again, Orario is in danger once again. Just about 7 years ago, Evelys launched a massive attack on the city, nearly defeating the adventurers and unleashing the horrors of the dungeon on this world. Just like the time before. The age of the heroes. If I may, Estrella-sama, I don't believe Evelys will make another appearance for a while, though they will probably have worse plans than ever before. The goddess was glad at the same time worried as she heard the Renard speaking, particularly after she heard what he had said about his previous encounter with Evelys outside of his village while he was recounting about the expedition. However, she couldn't come up with any good ideas. Well, let's leave them for later. How about you go find out if you have leveled up before terminating your expedition? I think that's a brilliant idea. Responding to Estrella was Take Mikazuchi with the rest of his familia behind. You can follow us to our familia home. Elise will probably come anyways. Thank you, Take. I'll gladly take that offer. On their way back, the Take Mikazuchi familia and the Estrella familia had invited the staff of the hostess so that all groups involved could be present. Due to that, the whole of the residence was now filled with adventurers. One by one, the members of the Take Mikazuchi familia came out, all with smiles as each and every member leveled up. Hiroto Inoue, age 15. Familia, Take Mikazuchi. Race, human. Alias, none. Level, 2 to 3. Strength, E445, I0. Endurance, F387, I0. Dexterity, C654, I0. Agility, B733, I0. Magic, I0, I0. Skill. Taka no Mi, sharpens user's vision allowing them to see much further than normal. Magic, none. Developmental ability. Abnormal resistance, I. Hunter, I. Arata Tanaka. Age, 16. Familia, Take Mikazuchi. Race, human. Alias, none. Level, 2 to 3. Strength, C627, I0. Endurance, D553, I0. Dexterity, A833, I0. Agility, C646, I0. Magic, I0, I0. Skill. Guggen, uses feelings to win are incarnated and envelope the user's blade. The incarnation increases the sharpness and size of the sword as well as the user's strength. Magic, none. Developmental ability. Abnormal resistance, I. Swordsman, I. Asuka Suzuki. Age, 17. Familia, Take Mikazuchi. Race, human. Alias, none. Level, 2 to 3. Strength, C698, I0. Endurance, D599, I0. Dexterity, A831, I0. Agility, C652, I0. Magic, I0, I0. Skill. Sorosan, allows user to convert all stats into strength for a single throw of the user's spear. It has an active trigger and can be used only once every 6 hours. Magic, none. Developmental ability, Chigusa Hitachi. Age, 16. Familia, Take Mikazuchi. Race, human. Alias, none. Level, 3 to 4. Strength, C625, I0. Endurance, D579, I0. Dexterity, S911, I0. Agility, B743, I0. Magic, I0, I0. Skill. Rita Shugi, ability that increases the dexterity and senses of the user when supporting a Vanguard unit. Ability increases corresponding to how many Vanguard units are being supported. Magic, none. Developmental ability. Abnormal resistance, I. Hunter, I. Mikoto Yamato. Age, 16. Familia, Take Mikazuchi. Race, human. Alias, none. Level, 3 to 4. Strength, B734, I0. Endurance, D587, I0. Dexterity, S999, I0. Agility, S954, I0. Magic, A869, I0. Skill. Yatano Kurogarasu, allows user to search enemies within a determined range, including hidden enemies. The skill only works on monsters that user has encountered beforehand. Will consider any clones to be a different monster. Has an active trigger. Yetano Shirogarasu enables user to search for members of the same familiar within a determined range. Has an active trigger. Yasei no Hunno sharpens user's instincts and raises agility and dexterity. Makes user's body act and fight independently of user's thought as the consciousness is separated from body. Magic. Futsuno Matema, gravity barrier that affects all who enter its effective range. User and allies included. I pray to you, God who destroys all things. Lead me from the highest heaven. Grant my puny mortal body the almighty power of the divine. Rescue them light of purification. Sword of crushing evil. Sweep sword of suppression. Sacred sword of conquest. Descend from the heavens and rule over the earth. Shinbu Tusei. Developmental ability. Swordsman, H.G. Abnormal resistance, I. H-chain attack, I. Uka Kashima. Age, 17. Familiar, Takemikazuchi. Race, human. Alias, none. Level, 3 to 4. Strength, S921, I0. Endurance, A866, I0. Dexterity, A839, I0. Agility, C658, I0. Magic, I0, I0. Skill. Berserk, taking a certain amount damage allows user to activate the skill. The skill drastically increases strength and endurance, but it comes at the cost of lowering the dexterity and rationality, leaving the user in a crazed state. Deactivates once stamina is depleted, user loses consciousness or when there are no more threats. Hogosha increases endurance and agility when using shield and is proportional to uses feelings to protect people. Increases strength and dexterity when using axe and is proportional to user's feelings to protect people. Magic, none. Developmental ability. Hunter, G.H. Abnormal resistance, I. Strong body, I. The group all sat down as they waited with bated breath for the last member to come out. It took a few minutes, but finally the door slid open revealing the Renard and the God of War standing there. Please welcome the now first-class adventurer Bell Yamato. Katsuki. Everyone cheered and congratulated the Takemikazuchi familiar. I'm beyond proud to say that everyone here has leveled up and everyone in the familiar is a second-class adventurer except for Bell, of course. There was no doubt that their rank would increase again, but more importantly, the 7 level-ups would shock the guild and cause an uproar at the upcoming Donatus. Even so, Takemikazuchi couldn't help but beam as he watched his familiar grow. Bell Yamato Katuski. Age, 14. Familiar, Takemikazuchi. Race, Renard. Alias, none. Level, 4 to 5. Strength, SSSSS 1500, I0. Endurance, SSSSS 1500, I0. Dexterity, SSSSS 1500, I0. Agility, SSSSS 1500, I0. Magic, SSSSS 1500, I0. Skill. Tsukikoge no Gensoku Ijisha. Active skill T-hat grants 8 spear that orbit perpendicular to the ground, behind the user. Activating the skill strengthens all basic abilities. Each illuminated orb, which corresponds to the current moon phase stage, provides a 20% point boost. It adds 20% of each basic stat points to corresponding state at a new moon phase up to 100% at a full moon phase. Each sphere represents a stage of the moon phase. The spheres provide a direct link to the moon. Due to this, moon empowered skills have effect even when not under direct line of sight of the moon. Ten no Kitsune, passive skill that grants regenerative ability to heal injuries. Power, greatly amplified under the moon. The amplification is exponentially proportional to how close the moon is to being a full moon. Argonaut, a heroic strike to turn around the situation, able to overcome all adversity. Attack that charges up with time. White and blue sparkles appear when active. The longer it charges, the stronger the power. Current maximum charge time, 9 minutes. Concurrent chanting achieved. Senho allows user to turn into a frozen fog and move around at fast speeds. Kodai Jinshu, Skill increases slots for skills and magic spells that can be learnt. Increases mind and strengthens effects of magic and their power. Magic. Tenrai no Hakaisha. Forms a sphere of light at the end of each of the 9 tails. Each sphere shoots a powerful ray that causes a massively destructive explosion. Order has fallen, and with it has justice. The lands are now wrought with rampant malice. Too long has it gone the suffering of the innocent. For I have been naively munificent. Arise, harbinger of destruction. Cleanse the world of this obstruction. Put an end to the incarnates of war. For their life they abhor. My love for this world has long ago wane. Thou existence is this realm's bane. It is mine duty as the guardian of order to act. Divine retribution is what mine decisions enact. I feel not the pain as mine actions this world it destroys. The countless eons have left me of my emotions devoid. By mine will have I now chosen to mend. The arrogation of mankind now comes to an end. Reito Furuwakeiji summons a blooming sakura at the user's feet from which ice vines sprouts and wraps around target. User can use one of 2 effects. 1. By saying Kankyo. The vines can grow long spikes stabbing into the enemy, which drains vitality, mind and stamina of target. The absorbed energy is then passed to user, replenishing his own vitality, mind and stamina. 2. By saying Taketsu can freeze the area wrapped by the vines. Once frozen, he can then break the vines, which shatters the ice and anything encased in it, or simply melt away the ice and release the target from frozen state. Bloom forth Sakura of the East. Let thee be free and released. Yukisho Sumetsu summons forth a snowstorm with the 9 tails, unleashing a frostflake that moves forwards continuously, cutting up anything within its range. Let mine tails bring forth the cold of snow. Display the beauty of thy mold and flow. Merciless are the frozen blades of nature's storm. With flawless poise and elegant form, the blizzard veils mine belief. Pity is the sight of thine grief. Inari no Aegis forms a giant frozen sakura flower that blooms and acts as shield. Bestow to the kitsune in the face of danger the protection of this world's nature. Developmental ability. Hunter, D, C. Mage, E, C. Luck, E. Strong body, either 9-tailed fox. Chapter summary. Bell is peacefully sleeping in the hostess with Elise in his arms when he is awoken by an emergency. Uka reveals a shocking truth and enrages Bell, prompting a rescue mission to be organized. Testing out his new level up, Bell fights against an irregular Monster Rex, showing how strong he got. As they return to the surface, though he wishes to berate Uka, he doesn't have the chance as Elise drags him and Astrea away. Bell spends time with the Astrea familiar, during which an incident occurs. Training with the members was fun until a certain elf made a blunder and trip. The incident that follows has them at Elise's feet, only to reveal that she wasn't angry, and a new development comes to light. Days later, he is made to join the meeting that was being held between the top familiars of Orario and the superpowers of the world. It is then that he reveals the events that unfolded during his expedition, and by the end of the meeting, he is greeted by a mysterious individual he hadn't expected to meet yet. Night was approaching by the time they decided to announce their level-ups to the guild. Taika Mikazuchi giddily led his familiars along Astrea and her own children to the Pantheon. After Royman had offended Taika Mikazuchi once in the past, it had become the war god's favorite hobby to cause chaos and disorder in the guild. Though some may call him petty, anyone would agree that Royman was the living definition of an asshole, even Astrea. Oh man, I can't wait to see the reaction on his face. Bell could only chuckle while Elise clung to his arm, affectionately rubbing his cheek with her own. Behind them, the men of the Taika Mikazuchi familia, Mikoto, Astrea, Ryu and Kagaya all watched, with jealousy, the couple. The redhead just enjoyed showing off her relationship with the Renard. My cheeky little captain. She's getting a little brazen, isn't she? They soon arrived at the guild, which was busy as usual. Adventurers, civilians, merchants, and outsiders populated the area inside the building. Inside, spotting the mentor, was the guild employee that had helped Bell previously when he was looking for familiars to apply to. Bell-san, it's been a while since I last saw you. Seeing the half-elf greet him, Bell approached her, followed by the rest of the group. Hey Aina, actually this is perfect. Could we submit the level-up reports to you? The advisor was surprised but nodded, of course. Take Mikazuchi then handed the papers to the advisor. It was only then that she noticed the two gods. Astrea-sama, Take Mikazuchi-sama, apologies for not noticing you. Fufu, don't worry, you must have been too charmed by our Renard here to notice. But careful. My captain won't give him up so easily. The teasing by Astrea caused the half-elf to blush brightly. So it's true that Belle-san is dating Elise-san. Yup. Seeing her clinging to the Renard was enough evidence, but hearing it from Astrea directly simply helped her confirm the rumor. But you are not denying that you were charmed. What? It's not like that. I'm just joking, Aina. The girl immediately proceeded to process the level-up reports to distract herself from the unusual teasing of the goddess of justice. Why so busy today? Belle's question brought everyone's attention to Aina. Take Mikazuchi and Astrea, along with their children, also perked up as they were genuinely curious as to why there were so many people today. Oh, today we have special envoys from other nations, diplomats, rich people, nobles, prince, and princesses, in some cases kings, queens, and emperors as well. What brought this on? Oh, actually Astrea-sama was meant to be informed just about now as one of the leading familiars in Orario. But Evelis has been on the rise and it was necessary to have a meeting with other world powers. Apart from the Empire and Telskiura, most others have come. You will probably be asked to join soon, Astrea-sama. So will Freya-sama, Loki-sama, and Ganesha-sama. Honestly, it didn't come as a surprise to the goddess. The situation with the evil organization was escalating every day and quickly at that. When she turned to see the way Elise wouldn't separate from Belle, it clicked in her mind, a way to keep them together even during the meeting. After all, cheeky or not, she enjoyed seeing the smitten captain. So, thinking about it, she still hadn't reported of Belle's actions being the cause of the tremors a couple of days ago. Perfect opportunity to bring Belle along to the meeting. Perhaps Elise had rubbed off on her, but she felt a weird pride in wanting to show off her captain and her boyfriend. Or perhaps there was something else at play. Either way, any thoughts were interrupted by the presence of an asshole. Actually, the asshole. Here to show off your meager earning, Take Mikazuchi-sama. Or perhaps a failed expedition. I am so sorry to hear that. I'll reduce the costs of the penalty as compensation for my mistake. Everyone turned to the fat little elf that appeared behind Aina. His smug grin, however, fell when spotting Astrea and seeing the smile on the war god's smile. Sorry, Royman, but I'm here to report that the expedition was complete. Our earnings incredible. All 7 of my children leveled up and our familiar has been raised to C rank. 3 level 3s, 3 level 4s, and a level 5. How do you like that now, eh? Royman. For a moment he didn't believe it, but when seeing the level up reports along with the humongous amount of magic stones and drop items that had attracted other adventurers to watch in awe, his face paled. He never imagined he'd be able to pull off the impossible task. However, his eyes went even wider when he saw the list of drop items that remained after, excluding those that had been handed into the guild as a requirement of the expedition. His eyes then scanned the exorbitant amount he had made through the magic stones alone. Ha, that's without the drop items, imagine that. HMPH, you just got lucky. Enough with you, what might bring you here? Astrea-sama. The way he just disregarded caused the familiar to have a deep desire to slice him to ribbons. No reason, here to accompany my captain, she simply can't let go of Take's child. After all. The fat elf turned to see the famous scarlet harnel attached to a handsome white head. Renard. What vexed him, however, was the fact that the Renard was part of the Take Mikazuchi familiar. But there was little he could do about it anyways, so he just left defeated, only asking Astrea and her children to participate in the meeting that was going to take place 4 days from now. Seems you finally got one over him, Take. That I did, but I owe all that to Belle and of course Elise. Thank you, Astrea. No need, Take. I'm doing this for my captain after all. All right. All done. Level ups have been reported and the amount of Valis calculated. How will you handle it? I will let Belle take it. Hearing that, the Renard looked shocked. But this is the familiar's money, no? Not at all, Belle. You did all the work, so all the money and drop items are yours to handle. Belle then turned to Astrea. My familiar doesn't need any money, and it depends on Elise since she was the one who participated, though I have an inkling that she will want something else. You're right, there is one thing I want in exchange for all of the work and waiting around I had to do. The Renard tilted his head and a smirk grew on her face. I want to have you all to myself for the next week. Spend time together, go on dates and cuddle together. And the Renard asked, knowing there was more. I guess I'll require your warmth, hugs and kisses as well. Belle blushed but smiled brightly. Deal. Takumi Mikazuchi and Astrea blushed hearing the requests of Elise. The two really had to get a room. In that case, I'd like to split the money from the magic stones in half. Very well, considering the amount it will have to be put in chests. Where would you like to have them delivered? One half to the hostess of fertility, the other half to my account. Aina then nodded without questioning the chosen location. What of the drop items? Do you wish to trade them in? No thank you. I'll take them with me. Once the transaction was done, the group of two familiars proceeded to the hostess of fertility to celebrate the successful expedition. On their way, Astrea and her children began a conversation with Belle, wanting to know more about him, while Takumi Mikazuchi praised his familiar for their battle. All the while, Belle and Elise never let go of each other. As usual, the hostess was full of people. Luckily, Mamau MIA had reserved a table for the two familiars. It was also no surprise to see Loki and her familiar being present. It was their favorite pub after all. But it was unusual to see Astrea and Takumi Mikazuchi familiar sitting together, thus standing out amongst the people currently in the establishment. While their orders were being served, Belle took the time to sneak out and talk to MIA about the arrangement of the money he had organized. She certainly was shocked to hear that he wanted to give her half of the entire earnings. You don't need to, boy. Consider this a future investment for all the time I will require your help then. MIA smirked before bursting into laughter. You sure know how to talk to me, boy. Fine with me. Returning her smile, he went back to sit next to Elise, who immediately grabbed his hand. Loki from her place still find it a little hard to believe that Elise had found a boyfriend, but their love was infectiously cute. Many couldn't help but stare at the adorable display of love the two showed everyone. Say Tilda. With a slight blush, Belle followed Elise's request as she fed him. Hee, you're so cute, Belle. Ryu stared at Elise, still a little bewildered by her new personality. She was like a completely different person, but then again, she supposed this is what love did to a person. Lyra, however, was extremely happy as it gave her more teasing material. Before I forget, Belle, would you mind attending the meeting in 3 days? Alongside my familiar. Will that be okay? I'm from the Takumi Mikazuchi familiar and we're not even B rank yet. Don't worry, we were investigating what had caused the recent earthquake. Considering it was caused by you, I'll use that as an excuse to bring you along. My captain probably wouldn't focus otherwise. Astrea-sama. The red-haired girl pouted as her goddess made her more desperate than she was. Probably. I see, I'll be attending then. Can't let Elise be distracted after all. Mao. Meanie. She poked his cheek repeatedly to annoy him, though it only managed to draw out giggles from him. She was too adorable in his eyes, and realizing it was backfiring, she decided to try the cold shoulder. That too, however, didn't last long, as an embrace later she was instantly melting in his warmth and following whatever request he made of her. You're too easy, Elise. You say that as if you would be any different. I don't. After all, I'd do anything for you, sweetheart. Hearing him call her sweetheart triggered a flip inside her, which she barely held back due to being in a public place. If not for that, she knew she would have pushed him down to the ground and kissed him with all the love and passion in her heart. For now, instead, she simply went with a quick peck on his cheek. You two seriously need to get a room, though I worry that if you do, we might end up with a dozen red-haired Renards running around. The two blushed hearing Lyra speaking. Lyra. The rest of the night went by uneventfully. Loki and her familiar joined in on the celebrations. At some point, on behalf of Belle, gratefully accepting his offer, the members of the Takumi Mikazuchi familiar were all awkward and tense throughout the entire time due to the presence of so many famous adventurers. As the celebration came to an end, the party broke up. Loki Familia returned home, as did Taika Mikazuchi and Astrea Familia. On behalf of the goddess request, however, MIA allowed Elise to stay with Bell in the hostess and left, reminding Bell to be there for the meeting with his armor and weapons. Don't worry, Astrea-sama, I'll be there. Besides, Elise will just drag me there in case I forget. Fufu, true. All right then, see you in 3 days. Have you not told her? Told her what, love? About my tales. Elise giggled and hugged Belle from behind. It was your secret, so of course not. It's your decision whether or not you wish to tell her. Belle couldn't help but smile before turning around, wrapping his arms around her. Thank you, sweetheart. The flip was once again switched. Never letting go of Belle, Elise closed the door to his room and locked it. She brought the Renard to the bed before pushing him down. Belle landed on the pillow and stared up to Elise, whose image captured his heart. She wore her thin night robe that left little to the imagination, her curvy figure being clad in the moonlight, which only highlighted her beauty. Belle, I want to go all the way tonight. Hearing that made Belle's eyes widen before placing his hands on her shoulders, stopping her from stripping down right there. The redhead, however, looked down saddened, which made Belle's heart clench. You don't want to. It's not that, Elise. You're beautiful and I'm the happiest man to hear that, but I don't want you to regret it. I would never. Probably, but you don't know. Besides, I want it to be special for us. We have plenty of time this coming week and lots of dates to make this special. Elise huffed before lying down on top of him and straddled him. Sorry, Elise. It's fine. But she kept pouting so cutely Belle nearly gave in. The Renard grabbed her head and turned to him before pushing his lips onto hers, drawing a soft moan out of Elise. Better. MMH tilde a bit more. They went back to kissing for a few minutes before the redhead pulled back. All right, you're forgiven. But be ready. The more you wait, the more I'll need you to be mine. I know. Good night, Belle. Good night, Elise. Anya knocked on the door for the 3rd time before deciding to peek inside. She pushed the door very quietly and looked with a blush at the sleeping form of Belle and Elise. The two were tangled together, with the captain of the Astrea Familia laying on top of Belle. The girl was so in love that even in her dreams and sleep she couldn't stop planting kisses on his cheek. Maybe I should leave them be for a little longer. With that, Anya closed the door again and went back down to tell MIA of the couple still asleep. It's nearly 12. Chloe complained as she head to work. Bow, it's fine. It's their day off anyways. You, however, need to start working, you dumb cat. And so the two were left to cuddle for a bit longer by MIA. Unfortunately, fate decided against that. Just then, Taika Mikazuchi burst into the pub with several other gods behind him as well as his familia. Oi, what the hell do you think you're doing? Hey, Taika Mikazuchi. I'm really sorry, MIA. I need Belle right now. He's upstairs sleeping, though you might risk a certain redhead's wrath if you go up now. It's urgent. A small black-haired goddess behind him desperately pleaded her. Ooh, Anya, go back up and get Belle. Yes, Mamau, MIA. She ran up and slammed open the door, which somehow didn't even make them stare. Belle. She began poking his cheek until his eyes fluttered open. Anya. Something urgent came up. Taika Mikazuchi-sama is asking for you. All right. Anya rushed back down while he got up, without waking the slumbering captain of the Astrea Familia, and donned his armor. When he made his way down, he made sure to have hidden his tails before being greeted with an unusual amount of people. Kiui tilde. Take. What's the matter? He let out an adorable fox noise when he yawned, but the situation seemed much too serious for anyone to dwell on it for but a moment. That's Dash. Taika Mikazuchi-sama, please wait. I should be the one to tell him. Uka looked down in shame. Uka, why are you and Hephaestus-sama here? And who are the other gods? They are the gods of the Hestia, Myak, and Alpheus Familia. And why are they here? What has that got to do with you guys looking for me? The thing is that we were back on the 27th floor testing out our new levels. When Hiroto got injured, we were trying to treat him when suddenly lots monsters started appearing. We started getting pushed back when irregulars spawned. We didn't think we had the ability to win, so we started running, but a horde of them chased us when we ran through. The party composed of the Hestia, Alpheus, and Myak Familia. The room shook as others. Irregulars started spore dash. Wait, now slow down a second. Uka, are you telling me you pass? Paraded. Another party. They were a party of second-class ADV dash. Uka, did you pass parade them? The roar was terrifying and could have easily put a monster Rex to shame. It was no surprise how everyone jumped as the sudden change scared everyone in the room. They had seen many sides, even his vicious one, but none struck more fear into the people at the pub than his enraged state. His ears and fur stood straight, his tail violently swung around while his snarl was accompanied with an icy glare that froze everyone's blood. What followed was the venomous growl that demanded to know the truth. Uka looked down in shame and fear as he felt a horrible pressure crush him. Even Takemikazuchi was surprised to see such a change, but it was no wonder, as his captain had just gone against every principle he lived by, to help and save others, to always put others before you. Yes. How could you? His voice was much deeper and fiercer than his usual mellow tone. The thunderous voice woke up Elise, who immediately equipped her armor and sword before rushing down. MIA pulled her aside and informed her of what happened while Belle stared down. Uka, please wait. I don't blame them for what they did. The only thing that matters to me is that my children are saved. So please help them. The small black-haired goddess he assumed to be Hestia pleaded him to save them. The other god and goddess behind her also agreed. Our children were also with them. Hephaestus joined the group of gods as she stood next to Hestia. As the familiar responsible, of course, will help you. Where were they when you last saw them? 25th floor. Fighting against the Amphispina. That caused Belle and Elise to turn to him. I defeated the Amphispina during the expedition. There should still be a few weeks left at the very least before it respawns. Yes, but I forgot to tell you it was an irregular, with black skin dash. You forgot to mention that it was one of the irregulars that spawned. When Uka didn't reply and only stared at the ground, Belle felt like pulling his hair out. Is there someone else we're meant to wait for? Yep, that would be me. Sabaki entered the room in that moment and dropped a weapon on the table. Sabaki. Yep, one and only. Now, Belle, I hope you brought me some drops from the lower floors. I'll make you the best sword then. I'll show you after we deal with this. Got it? Please, I beg you to save my children. Hestia was on her knees as she begged the 3 first-class adventurers. Please do not worry. We will do our best, right? Elise smiled brightly as she hugged Belle. Course, Welfie is down there. My goddess would be heartbroken if that happened. The gods thanked them while Hephaestus made sure to bonk her captain. The Takemikazuchi Familia along the 2 first-class adventurers followed Belle as they headed for the dungeon. They did not waste any time as they began sprinting at speeds that level 2s wouldn't be able to perceive. Did something just pass by us? No idea what you're talking about, man. Civilians and low-level adventurers alike were left confused as the rescue team darted across the streets, heading right for Babel. They landed at the entrance of the dungeon, startling all adventurers that were around. Let's go. The beautiful Elise shall lead the way. I can't believe they fucking paraded us. Those Far Eastern bastards. I'ma tear those assholes to shreds when I see them again. Wani-chan, you shouldn't do that. Of course I have to, Emma. You saw what those sacks of shits did, right? But their members seemed injured. That doesn't matter. A purple-haired woman cussed, pouring her heart or hatred out while slashing at the countless monsters that chased them. Her sister in the meantime trying her best to calm her down, though she wasn't resulting successful. Just about 3 hours ago, the Takemikazuchi Familia had led a massive mob of monsters to them, filled with a variety of monsters and irregulars. To say she, along with the rest of her party, was less than thrilled was an understatement. Many of their members were exhausted and injured, some critically, and were currently being carried. Though a large group, they were slowly being overran by the infinite influx of monsters. They were on the 24th floor on the way back to the 18th when the monsters arrived. But with the persistent assault, they were forced to go down the 25th floor. However, the problem started when an amphispina appeared. Black like the void, its red eyes locked onto them. Oh no. Their party consisted of level 3s, 2s, and 1s. Not only were they too weak to face a regular amphispina, they were exhausted and injured, but the main problem they faced was that it was an irregular monster Rex. Wani-chan, what do we do now? Run. The 3 first-class adventurers were running ahead of the Takamikazuchi Familia, who could barely keep up with them as it was. Then Belle and Elise made it more challenging when they decided to turn it into a competition. Say love wanna see who gets there first. Who is faster, me with my fire enchantment or you with your frosty skill? Belle smirked when he heard his girlfriend. Sure, I will show you how amazing this handsome fox of yours is. Wait, are you too serious? Yup. Just like that, Elise burst into flames before dashing forwards at speeds that few level 6s could compete with. Belle wasn't far behind as he turned into a small ball of mist before shooting forwards faster than an arrow. Man, those two are unbelievable. Truly a couple made in heaven. We shouldn't fall too far behind Belle Dono and Elise Dono. Ha ha ha, you're right. Tsubaki then increased her speed to catch up to the other two, shocking the samurai as they were left behind in the dust. Sometimes it was hard to remember that the captain of the Hephaestus Familia was a level 5 adventurer as well as being as a smith. Let's go Ukadono. Right. The group, now running for their dear life from the amphispina, was comprised of 16 people altogether, 11 members of the Alpheus Familia, 1 of the Hephaestus Familia, 1 of the Myak Familia, and 3 of the Hestia Familia. Despite trying their best, the monster Rex had caught up to them and engaged them in a battle. However, during the clash between the party and the dragon-type monster, the battlefield had collapsed, bringing everyone down to the 27th floor. Wani-chan, what do we do now? We have no choice, Emma. We have to defeat the amphispina unless you want to leave the injured behind and make a run for the safe area below. The girl called Emma shook her head, not wanting to leave behind her friends. Sophia, watch out. A spear flew next to the girl who kept cussing, killing a monster that had snuck up behind. Tha Oriana move. When the blonde-haired girl turned around, she spotted one of the irregular lizard men swinging a scimitar at her. Seeing it come without any chance to dodge it, she closed her eyes. Her death, however, didn't come as a white ball of frost landed on the monster, squashing it as the Renard turned back just before impact. Are you okay? Oriana was it. Are you okay? The young knight looked up at the Renard and couldn't help stare. She hadn't noticed the first time she was saved by him, but he was much more handsome than she thought. A face comparable to a god, long silky hair and bright rubellite eyes that shone like gems. As he extended his hand, she couldn't but believe this was the work of fate, love at first sight, she would say. Why yes, thank you. She took his hand and got back up. Sophia and Emma approached the two when they saw 2 more monsters heading right for them. But they didn't have the time to shout and warn them as one was slapped to death by the Renard's tail while the other was cut down by a dart of fire. Elise Lovell. Emma had always been a fan of the Astrea Familia, and meeting their captain was like a dream come true. She watched the red head pout before approaching and jabbing the giggling Renard. Hee, seems like I win, Elise. Mao, you only won because I ran into a monster. A loss is a loss. A roar then brought them out of their flirting. Mine. You already killed it last week. But you killed the Goliath on our way back. Remember, we agreed that we alternate, so whoever last killed a monster Rex lets the other have it. That means this one is mine. Besides, it's great to test and get used to my level up. Mao, it's not fair. You get all the good ones. I'll make up for it later today. Fine. Elise then pulled the Renard in and captured his lips with her own, shocking everyone there, who were not aware of her relationship with Belle. She had no problem with publicly showing her affection for him, though it was just as embarrassing as it was for Belle. Oriana's dream of her first love fell apart just as quick as it was born, right before her eyes as another woman claimed him. She felt her heart shatter but made sure to not show it to the other members, not that any of them noticed her admiration for the boy. Belle ran to the monster, shocking everyone as he didn't unsheath his weapon. Their shock was elevated to another level when he slugged the amphispina and knocked the entire body into the wall. Bell then proceeded to use his fists and tail to smack around the monster Rex. As other monsters began arriving, Elise took control of the front line while having the exhausted members pull back. She single-handedly dealt with the hundreds of monsters, showing her swordsmanship. However, more monsters began flooding in from areas. More monsters. Leave them to the rest of our reinforcements. As she said that, Tsubaki slammed into the horde and killed a dozen with a single slash of her blade. Tsubaki. Hey Welfie, got more guys here to help you. That's when the rest of the Takemikazuchi familia arrived. It was to no one's surprise that Welf and Sophia looked shocked. What are they doing here? Yeah, they got our asses in this mess in the first place. Tsubaki, however, was fast to stand them down. I know you're angry, but they are sorry and they do feel guilty. Otherwise they wouldn't have warned your familiars, gathered people to rescue you and come down themselves. I'd rather die than be saved by them. They can't be that much stronger than us. Anyways, except they are. They have 3 level 4s. I'll fight all of their familia to show you I'm stronger. As a level 3, even if you manage by some miracle, tell me, Sophia, do you think you can beat him as well then? She pointed to the Renard who was smacking the monster Rex across the face with his tail. He's also a member of their familia. He is, and the reason you're alive, as well as the reason why Elise is here helping you. TCH. For now, focus on getting out of this one. It had taken 30 minutes for the reinforcements to annihilate the remaining monsters. The only threat remaining being the monster Rex, which was currently having a less than fun time with Belle. Everyone had gathered to watch the Renard beat the amphispina. As it turned out, the only enhancements that the amphispina got were the ability to regenerate and a third head that could shoot a beam of acid that melted everything it came into contact with. But other than that, it was no different than the regular amphispina. Time to end it. With one last swat of his tail, he knocked the monster Rex down and chanted his magic spell, which unleashed a spinning frosty wind that cut up the monster from head to tail. The monster popped into a cloud of white dust, leaving behind its magic stone, signaling the end of the fight. They all cheered for the Renard, while Elise went attached herself back to Belle, wrapping her arms around him. The group was now heading back to the surface. The Takemikazuchi familia stayed at the very back, avoiding the other familiars who currently didn't have the best impression of them. Meanwhile, Belle, Elise and Tsubaki were at the front with Welf, Sophia, Emma, and Oriana. I apologize on behalf of my familia, Oriana. Oh no, I couldn't let you take responsibility for that. She's right. You weren't there, nor are you the captain, and you also came to save us. So oh, you won. Welf grinned at him. Wipe that smirk before you get any weird ideas. He's my customer. Tsubaki made it clear who his smith was, causing the man to grumble. That is not why I was saying that. But seriously, it's not everyday you see a person beating the shit out of a monster Rex like that. HMPH, I suppose what Welf says is true. Even Sophia couldn't refute the fact that they owed Belle a lot for saving them. Emma, on the other hand, was much more open and happy with their situation. Thank you so much. It was also amazing seeing you fight with the amphispina. Annalise, too. Sorry about my little sister. She is a fan of the Scarlet Harnel. By the way, I'm Sophia Flores, captain of the Alpheus Familia. This is my sister Emma Flores. The group exchanged greetings, each member of the familia presenting themselves to the first-class adventurers, many of which were fans of Elise. But the moment that was over, Elise grinned and puffed her chest out proudly. Hear that, Belle? I have admirers. The Renard only giggled before giving her hand a squeeze. Well, let us return to the surface. It had taken a few hours, and it was just past 4 o'clock. When they finally exited the dungeon, they were greeted by Takemikazuchi, Hestia, Alpheus, Mayak, Hephaestus and, surprisingly, Astrea. She had apparently learnt of the situation after she went to pick up her captain. Astrea-sama, what brought you here? You two, of course. You see, since you two will both be at the meeting in 2 days, I want you to come with the rest of the familia to buy more ornamental equipment. For show rather than utility, and perhaps something for your dates as well. Elise looked ecstatic, and before anyone could say anything she grabbed Belle's hand in her right and Astrea's in her left before dragging them off. Everything Belle had intended to say to Uka was forgotten soon after, not that he would escape a severe punishment by Taika Mikazuchi. The other gods and their respective familiars also lost the opportunity to thank the two, but guess there was little they could do now. Well, there they go. Belle awkwardly shifted as he sat in a tailoring shop, but what made it truly embarrassing for Belle was the company. He was surrounded by the girls of the Astrea familia, Elise holding on his right arm, while Astrea took his left, saying she needed an escort. All around, revealing clothes, swimsuits, and underwear for women filled his vision. All the female customers giggled as they stared at him while the girls of the familia tried different outfits and asked for his opinion. Belle did his best to give his honest opinions, praising them when they showed their clothes to him. It was also at this time that he truly noticed how everyone in the Astrea familia was beautiful, but he quickly shook his head to remove the impure thoughts. The girls all blushed and giggled at the praise and gave him a little twirl. Seeing the red Renard caused Elise and Astrea to giggle as well. Then came Kaguya and Ryu, who entranced Belle with their new outfits. Kaguya wore a violet short-sleeved kimono with golden trims, while the backside had long flaps flowing down her backside to her ankles. The front was left stopped halfway down the thighs. Alongside that, she wore dark purple tights that stopped before the bottom of the kimono, allowing for a little bit of her thighs to be exposed. A purple rose beautifully kept her side ponytail tied, and a red sash held the kimono up. Armored vambraces covered her forearm while metal tassels protected her shoulders. To add to her style, she had a mantle flowing down her left side. Ryu, on the other hand, wore a white, gold, and blue outfit. For an elf, and Ryu specifically, it showed a lot more skin than she was used to. The outfit was sleeveless, with the wraps holding the outfit going around her neck. It left her shoulders and the top of her back exposed. The shorts coupled with the tights left her thigh exposed down to the knee. The armor covered her forearms and chests, while still leaving a good amount of her cleavage for the world to see. Like Kaguya, she had a mantle that flowed down her right side to give her that heroic look. For the first time Belle could remember, the elf pulled her hair back into a ponytail with a blonde bang flowing down each side of her face. What do you think, Belle? You look beautiful, Kaguya, like a princess. Fufu, thank you, Belle. Kaguya couldn't help but blush a little before she pecked his cheek, shocking all the members there, though Elise didn't seem to mind. What about me, Katsuka-san? Ryu fiddled with her fingers, looking away as a massive blush took over her face. Belle froze for a moment before smiling. You look gorgeous, Ryu-san. A true fairy that represents justice. Also just call me Belle. Ryu exploded in a blushing mess, steam blowing out of her twitching ears. Ara. Belle, was Elise not enough for you? And no, that is not what I dash. Astrea began patting his head affectionately while showing a warm smile. I was just joking. I know you're too kind and loyal to go cheating on my little captain. The Renard pouted at the goddess before Elise got up. All right, my turn now. When she came out, she wore a white sleeveless shirt under a red jacket. Black shorts with long brown boots that reached all the way up to her knees. Her new white and golden armor set covered her shoulder, forearms, waist, and chest, while leaving a generous amount of cleavage. A long red mantle flowed down her back, giving her a heroic vibe like Ryu. To finish the outfit, she put on a pair of beige fingerless gloves, a brown sash tightly wrapped around her hips, showing off her curves. What do you think of your girlfriend? Belle got up and wordlessly wrapped his arms around her, bringing her in close. He then whispered accidentally, using his most sensual tone. I love it. You look stunning, my love. She giggled before returning the hug. But didn't you tell Astrea-sama that you wanted to buy some extra clothes? Nope. That's for tomorrow's date, thus a secret. I want it to be a surprise for you. After all, tomorrow. Is it a problem? Nope, I'm sure we'll have fun. The goddess then got their attention with a fake cough. Seeing their position, the two blushed a little and separated, but not without holding hands. I hope you can give me a little review as well. I believe no matter what you wear you will always look pretty. Fufu, thank you Belle. Astrea then tried her own custom outfit. She came out and gave a twirl before looking at her children and Belle to see their reaction. Seeing their wide eyes and mouths she gave a satisfied giggle. Her outfit was completely white with golden trims. It wrapped around her neck down, her chest, leaving her collarbone, shoulder and the top of her back exposed. The dress went down in a wide skirt made of many layers of frills that reached all the way down to her ankles. The golden insignia of her familiar was boldly imprinted over the stomach. You look gorgeous, Kamisama. Thank you, girls. Now I believe it's a certain Renard's time to shine. Belle perked up before he was dragged by Astrea and Elise to one of the changing rooms. Now put this on, okay. Okay. The girls all giddily waited for the beast person to come out. Astrea had gone for a far eastern look for Belle. When he came out holding his tail out of embarrassment, the girls all yelped at how cute he was. He wore a full Far Eastern attire, nagagi, hari and hakama, all of which were white with red imprints and flower patterns. Hidden below the hakama, he had armored greaves, while below the long sleeves he had vambraces. A rubellite belt held his hakama up, while a chest plate protected his thorax and stomach. Like Kagaya, he also had shoulder guards and a mantle flowing behind him. He looked exactly like a prince out of a fairy tale. Kia, Belle, you're so cute. Elise dove on the Renard, making him jump as her arms wrapped herself around him. You look very handsome, Belle. Thank you, Astrea-sama. Now, how about we head home? Is this really okay for me to stay at your manor? Don't worry, Belle. The girls here have little experience with men, as none of them have dated or kissed a man before. The girls all seem to be okay with you. Besides, tomorrow, you're going on a date with Elise, while the day after you're attending the meeting with our familiar, so you might as well just stay with us. And I already contacted MIA to let her know. Ah, I see. All right, thank you very much, Astrea-sama. Elise behind them giggled before moving next to Astrea and bumping her into Belle. Hiya. The sudden scream caused Belle to immediately react and wrap her in his tail, his arms going around her waist. Astrea stared at the red irises, inches away from hers. A blush sprouted on her face as she was inches away from kissing the boy. Belle quickly backed up, which left her a little disappointed. Wait, why am I disappointed? Elise, what are you doing? Ryu rushed up to the three as Elise gave her a suggestive wink. Ara, you want in as well, Lion. I saw how you blushed when he praised you. Hi. The elf was once again blushing madly when she heard Elise. Elise, I don't think that was appropriate. He's your boyfriend. Elise then went up close to Astrea, whispering in her ear. Isn't he the ideal man? Isn't he the ideal partner of the goddess of justice? Justice and heroism incarnate. Pure and innocent, the perfect man for you. I wouldn't mind sharing with you, Kamisama. Didn't you feel disappointed when Belle backed up instead of closing the distance as his soft lips captured yours in a searing kiss? As he hungrily devoured you. The goddess turned into a blushing mess as she imagined herself doing that with Belle. Elise, that's enough. Hee, do think about that. Luckily, the rest of the day was uneventful, with dinner being the only interesting time as Astrea and Ryu blushed, not being able to meet the Renard's eyes. As soon as the dinner was over, the two girls excused themselves, taking the opportunity to run and rushed out of the room. The rest of the night was spent exchanging stories before everyone retired for the night. Elise dragged the Renard to her room and used him as a pillow, intimately kissing and snuggling before sleep took them both to their dream world. When Elise woke up, her eyes opened to see the handsome face of a sleeping Renard. She caressed his cheek before brining her lips up to his and tenderly kissing him. She was about to break the kiss when a hand grabbed the back of her head and deepened the kiss. Good morning, Belle. Good morning, Elise. The two stretched and got up. The stretching form of Elise in her sleepwear under the sunlight turned Belle on. He couldn't stop from hugging her from behind before pulling her in. A deep kiss, his tongue swirling inside her mouth. Elise was surprised by his sudden assertiveness, but now she understood how to turn him on, and she had to admit she loved how aggressive he was when he was horny. Bell Tilda. She turned and pushed him back down on the bed before straddling him and going back to kissing him. The two were once again too into the kiss to hear the knock. The door opened, and Ryu came in to wake her captain up only to remain flustered as she watched the passionate exchange. Her eyes fixed on their connected lips and the way Elise grinded her hips against his. How LLU'd. She immediately left the room, closing the door behind her. Meanwhile, Bell and Elise kept the exchange going for a few minutes before they broke apart. Sorry, Elise. I don't know why, but when I saw you like that I couldn't hold back. I loved it. Now let's go. The others are probably waiting already. The two separated and began changing when Estrella passed by with a groggy look in bed, hair on the way to the bathroom. She yawned as she passed by the open door. With the tail of her eye she saw Elise changing while Bell hugged her from behind using his 9 fluffy tails to fully wrap. Wait, what dash? Estrella stopped as she passed the doorway, did a double take and walked back to look into the room to confirm what she had just seen. There Bell with his single tail around her waist, his hands around her stomach and collarbone as he pecked her cheek. Must have imagined it. Phew, that was close. Yep, too close, Bell. With a nod the two finished changing clothes and reached the dining room. The room was lively with chatter and smiles, to the exception of an elf who looked down at her food with a blush. No matter how the other members tried, they couldn't pry anything out of the flustered fairy. The goddess had cleaned herself and was now sat at the head of the table. Now, I believe it's best we break the news to our dear captain. Estrella smiled brightly, but something about her words terrified Elise. Allow me to, as the vice-captain, to do that. Elise, seeing as you shirked a lot of your duties as captain and member of the Estrella Familia, I hope you're ready for what is to come. Elise shivered hearing that. But Estrella-sama said that was time off. It was an entire week off. That is why we are not punishing you nor forcing you to make up for it. We're just saying that you need to be ready to resume your duties. Starting now. Fine, when do I wait? Now. Yep, I know you had a date in mind, that is why you'll start now, work hard and finish before noon so you can go with Bell on your date. Elise looked to Bell with a pleading look, but was intercepted by Estrella. Oh no, Bell will not be there with you. It is your duty as captain and something Bell shouldn't have to be helping you. Besides, I have other things to talk to him about. Kagaya then grabbed Elise by the collar before dragging her off to her office. The redhead wailed and flailed around as she despaired, calling for Bell to help her. The others all watched pitifully as she was taken away. Now, Bell, in the meantime, why don't you get used to your level up by sparring with some of my girls? That would be great, Estrella-sama. Who will I be sparring with? Since both Elise and Kagaya are unavailable and Lyra is out on a mission, you can spar with some of the level 4 members and Ryu, who is level 5. He turned to the mentioned elf, who the moment their eyes met she blushed and immediately looked away. Is something the matter, Ryu-san? And no, nothing at all, BB Bell. The goddess and the Renard tilted their heads seeing her flustered state, but simply shrugged. Then get your weapon. Meet us in the courtyard when you're ready, Bell. Bell grabbed his sword and met the remaining girls, who were not on a mission or on patrol, all ready to spar with him. His eyes unwillingly moved to Ryu, who wore her typical green outfit with her loose blonde hair with Alf's Lumina at her side. Is something the matter, Ka Bell? No, just thought you looked pretty in this outfit. The way he said that with a straight face caused Ryu to burst into a blush once again. Is he trying to flirt with me? As she thought that, the memory of Elise and Bell making out played out in her head before her fantasies took over. She imagined the same memory, but instead of Elise, it was her making out with Bell. The blush on her face and the lack of response prompted Bell to place a hand on her forehead. Ryu-san, are you okay? Feeling the warmth of his hand, she snapped out and distanced herself. Sorry, I'm ready to spar whenever you are. I think you need to rest, Ryu-san. Let me spar with the others first. Once you're sure you're ready, we can spar. Saying that, he approached the closest member, Knees, who stared at him with a bewildered. After he touched the elf without getting smacked, he tied the sheath to the sword, tightly so it wouldn't come off the blade even if he swung it with all his strength. I let him touch me, and I didn't react violently. Why did I not slap him away? A million questions swam through her head. Bell had thoroughly beaten every member of the Estrella Familia. To the girls. Pleasure, Belle. Offered a lap pillow every time he knocked someone out. If only he knew that. Elise could see. It happened from the window of her office, causing her to pout at the unjust situation. After providing one last lap pillow to Noin, he turned to Ryu, who was still a little red in the face, and approached her to see if she was ready to spar. Astrea, in the meantime, had watched the spars with a smile, though she had to admit that she was a little sad to see her members suffering constant defeats. Are you okay, Ryu-san? The blonde elf looked up and nodded. Are you sure? You're still red. I'm fine, Belle. Let us spar. But I warn you, I tend to take things too far. With a small smile, Ryu got in position opposite of Belle as she readied herself. She had seen enough to know Belle was extremely skilled and knew how to quickly adapt. She raised her wooden sword and dashed forwards. She swung down but missed as he sighed. Stepped. She swung again, going for 2 horizontal slashes, but both second and third were dodged. The 4th attack was blocked, the 5th deflected. As soon as the attack was redirected, the counter-attack came immediately, hitting her arm, which caused her to have to back up. To say she was surprised was an understatement, but the momentary distraction costed her another hit to the leg as the Renard sprinted forwards with unbelievable speed. She retaliated by slashing but missed as he jumped back. And so the sparring continued, back and forth they traded blows. While Belle maintained his advantage, landing more hits than he received, Ryu also began getting the hang of it. Though it was clear who was going to win the match, it was a heated battle, and all the Astrea familia watched in awe at their spectacle. It was 10 minutes since the battle started that the incident happened. Say, Ryu-san, is something the matter? Did I offend you? The elf dodged a strike before her eyebrow arched up. What do you mean, Belle? And just call me Ryu, please. It's just that you've been acting weird since this morning. He thrusted his blade towards Ryu, who deflected the strike. At breakfast you would avoid looking at me, and you've been red in the face since I first saw you this morning. Even now when we arrived in the courtyard. Was it perhaps the fact that I was too forwards with the praise? Or maybe because I touched you earlier? I'm really sorry, I forgot that as an elf you probably don't like physical touch. The elf felt like an idiot for making the Renard worry that much, but telling him the truth was going to be equally embarrassing for both her and him. No, not at all, Belle. If anything, I'm sorry for making you worry like that. Throughout the conversation, the two never stopped swinging their weapons at each other. Stabs, slashes, punches, and kicks. The two threw attacks after attacks while maintaining the conversation, but slowed down as Ryu prepared to tell the truth. You see, I couldn't face you after this morning. What about this morning? I saw what exactly, Ryu? You and Elise. Me and Elise. KKK kissing on the BBB bed. Kyun. The Renard burst into a blushing mess just as she thrusted towards his head. Belle. Ryu swung her arm down to avoid the vulnerable Belle. But swinging the arm down was a fatal mistake. The sword hit the ground, suddenly stopping her forwards motion. That caused her to stumble on her feet before falling forwards. Belle, in his flustered state, could not react to Ryu's body flying towards him, and the inevitable happened. Astrea, Noin, Knees, and Maru watched from the sidelines at the amazing fight. Kagaya and Elise were also watching from the window with great interest. What amazed the level for members even more was how they were having a conversation, not that they could hear it. Then suddenly Belle's face turned red and his attention on the fight lost. Belle! The girls all shouted, worried, and in that moment they saw Ryu's sword heading for his face, just before the elf forced it out of the way to not injure the Renard. However, as Ryu crashed into Belle with her body, so did her face, her lips landing right on the boy's own. The two fell to the ground with a searing kiss, silencing any shout or yelp that would have been heard otherwise. Ryu. The girls and Astrea watched with red faces as the two laid on the ground, locked in a kiss, their eyes fluttering open as they regained their bearings before their gazes met. From the office, Kagaya watched with wide eyes and her fan covering her mouth. She slowly turned to see Elise trembling, her eyes hidden behind her bangs. Oh. Ryu felt a comfortable and pleasuring warmth capturing her lips. When her eyes opened, she saw a pair of rubellite orbs staring back at her. Their hands were snugly intertwined as their kiss continued. Then realization set in and the two blushed bright red like an apple. Before the elf sat up straight, unknowingly straddling his waist, her butt sitting on his crutch. BBBB Bell. I am so sorry. I didn't mean to KK kiss you. The Renard, however, couldn't speak, far too embarrassed and ashamed to utter a word. Ryu. The girl looked to her left as the voices of her fellow familiar members finally reached her flustered ears. As she looked towards Estrella, she caught a glimpse of Kagaya and then Elise, whose reaction she couldn't see due to the bangs covering her eyes. The sight caused her face to lose all color. The thought of driving a wedge in between Belle's and Elise's relationship made her heart drop. Orario, could you please get off me? She looked down to see herself in a very compromising situation. Kia. The blonde fairy jumped to her feet and away from Belle. Estrella crouched down and helped the white-haired boy sit up when both also noticed the dark form of Elise staring through the window. The sight made them gulp, but they knew they'd have to go explain the situation to her. Elise stood before Belle and Ryu, who were sat on the ground. Kagaya and Estrella watched from the edge of the room. Silence. No words had been said since they came in, and the tension was thick, so thick you could cut it with a knife. Estrella-sama, Kagaya, could you two leave? The two wanted to say something, but seeing the red-haired girl stopped them from voicing any protests. Once the door behind the closed, her eyes found Belle, who could feel her stare, despite looking at the ground. Belle, how could you do that with Lion? Hearing her shout made Belle bow down in a perfect dejiza before apologizing. I'm really sorry, Elise. I swear I didn't mean for that to happen. You're the only one I love, I promise. Please wait, Elise. It's my fault. My words caused him to lose concentration. Then I stumbled and accidentally kissed him, but that wasn't his fault. Please, I would hate nothing more than to cause trouble for yours and Belle's relationship. I'll take any punishment, so please forgive Belle. Oh, any punishment? Her voice dark and full of anger. Yes, any punishment. The two only deigned themselves to look up to her knees, and could see her shake and prepared for the worst, but what came next was not what they expected. A strained noise turned into a giggle before turning into laughter. Elise held her stomach with one hand while wiping away a tear with a finger of the other hand. Hey! The two looked up at the captain of the Estrella familiar, full of confusion. Why are you not angry? Hearing the question of her beloved, Elise grabbed his hand and pulled him up, pushing his body against hers before tightly wrapping her arms around him and drawing him in for a deep, wet kiss, reclaiming his lips as hers. The elf watched with wide eyes and a blush at the passionate exchange until the captain pulled back, though she kept her face close enough for the tips of their noses to touch. Nope. Though I have to say I was a little surprised when the two of you suddenly kissed. I would have hoped you two knew me a bit better by now. I would never be mad at you two for this. But man, was that funny. Also, you do realize I saw the entire thing from here, right? But why? He's your boyfriend and I just kissed him. Because it was you, Lion. Hee. I was planning to hook you up with Belle. Anyway, so it was a surprise when my plans suddenly advanced much quicker than I thought. What? The elf burst into a blushing mess yet again. But he's your boyfriend. Tell me, Lion, didn't you let him touch you? Didn't you allow him without reacting violently? Aren't you feeling safe and warm around him? Isn't it easy to talk to him, too? Enjoy time with him. You kissed him, yet you defend him instead of trying to kill him. Isn't all of that true? Ryu blushed but nodded. Did you enjoy the kiss? She nodded. Did it feel good? She nodded again. So tell me, Lion, honestly, do you like Belle? But he already has you. There is no rules against a harem in Orario, is there? Now, besides, I love him so much that even if he cheated and he slept with another woman, which I know he won't, I'd probably let him off with a kiss. The word and the action was enough for the blush to return full force. I don't know. Hee. I suppose as an elf and as Lion this might be a little early for you, but I want you to remember the feeling and think about it. However, Belle, you should know that elves only touch members of the opposite sex who they acknowledge, respect, and love. Their partner, alone and no one else. Also, they only fall in love once, meaning that you, mister, need to take responsibility for both touching her and taking her first kiss. Belle blushed but nodded, not knowing what to say. Now, let's tell Estrella that everything is okay. So, Elise invited the other two back in before telling them what happened in the room. Both members were completely blown away when Elise finished recounting what happened. As she expected, none of the two seemed outraged at the idea, just surprised. And you would be fine with that, Elise? Yes, Estrella-sama. As long as I get Belle's love, I wouldn't mind sharing him with other women. Belle was waiting for Elise to get ready for the date, whilst thinking about what she had declared before. He had gone for his usual black pants and white shirt outfit, while also adding a black jacket, because according to Estrella it fit him well. Whilst deep in thought, he didn't notice the red-haired girl sneaking up on him from behind. "Who is it?" she asked as she put her hands over his eyes. "My love." When he turned around, he stopped a minute to observe her new outfit. A simple, white frilly blouse, a red skirt and black tights, while her hair was let down loose instead of being kept in her usual ponytail. "Like what you see. You look really gorgeous, Elise." She blushed at the praise before grabbing his hand and beginning their date. "Let's go have some fun." Elise intertwined her hand with Belle's as they walked down the main road that led to Babel. The two lively chatted while everyone around stared. It was an unusual sight to see the Scarlet Harnell and a white-haired Renard both in casual attire as they walked hand in hand. The two happily walked while being lost in their little world, visiting shops and street vendors. The two explored the city until they reached Babel. It was then that Belle's nose caught the whiff of something delicious, causing his ears to twitch. Elise noticed and giggled, following the direction his head turned to. There she spotted a stall selling crepes. "Wanna get one?" "Yep." She smiled as she watched his tail adorably swish left and right. Reaching the stall, the owner recognized the famous captain of the Estrella Familia. "Oh, if it isn't the Scarlet Harnell, what can I do for you?" "Let's see. What do you want, Belle?" The Renard watched the menu and licked his lips at the variety. "ARA is the captain of the Estrella Familia on a date." The redhead smiled brightly and nodded. "Then I suggest you two get a couple special." Elise turned to Belle with a glint in her eyes which made Belle chuckle. "We'll get the couple special. Thank you for your patronage." Belle handed the valise to the shopkeeper as he gave them a pair of crepes. Taking the food, they made their way to the closest bench to sit down. Belle took his crepe, which contained strawberries and whipped cream, while Elise's was filled with chocolate and bananas. Elise took a bite out of hers and savored the taste before turning to look at her boyfriend. As he bit into the crepe, his ears wiggled and his tail danced around as he smiled brightly. "Oh dear, Estrella, he is too cute." Belle say Tilda. The Renard's eyes snapped to her crepe. Deciding to humor her, he aimed for the spot she had bitten into and took a chunk out of it. Once again his ears and tails reacted, adorably making Elise coo at the sight. "How was it?" "Delicious, more so because you ate it, Tilda." The alluring smirk caused her to blush before noticing something to get back at him. A little smudge of chocolate next to his lips. Without saying a word, she closed in on him and licked the chocolate off his cheek, drawing a yelp out of the Renard. "Hee. The chocolate sure was tasty when it was served on your cheek." "Goo. You're bad for my heart, you know." "I'm glad to hear that." She proceeded to gently kiss him, the first time she did in public, cementing her position as the Renard's girlfriend as a few hundred people witnessed the intimate exchange between the two adventurers. Many men stared jealously as Belle reciprocated and deepened the kiss. "I love you, Elise." "Me too, Belle." The two finished up their crepes by feeding each other before going to a park to relax. Sitting below a tree, he let Elise lay down on his lap and lean back onto him. They remained quiet, only holding hands, occasionally pecking each other's cheek. The quiet moment was a good way for them to spend time, and with the warmth of one another it never got boring. "Belle." "Yes. Why did you want to become an adventurer?" Belle took a moment to think about it before replying. "It was a promise to my grandpa, who took care of me. I promised him to become a hero. The other reason is because I want my grandpa's familia that had fallen from grace to bear recognized and redeemed their honor and reputation. They simply deserved better. I see. Just know I'll be there for you to lean on, every single step of the way. He rubbed her cheek with his and smiled. Thank you, love. Elise then turned around and straddled his hips. Her hand came up and caressed his cheek, her face an inch from his. Have I told you how beautiful you are, Elise? She rolled her eyes, but before he could say any more sweet words, she sealed his mouth with a kiss. Tapping his lips with her tongue, it soon became a battle for dominance as the two rapidly lost themselves in the moment. She tightly held his head with her arms, while giving up the battle and conceding to Belle, letting him lead the rhythm of their kiss. Beltilda, this has easily become my favorite pastime. Mine as well. So they continued to display their love for each other. Hee, I love you, Beltilda. Hee, I love you, Elise Tilda. Belle and Elise spent the rest of the day walking around, having a nice dinner, before returning to the Stardust Garden. The moment they arrived, they were greeted by the rest of the familia, who immediately bombarded them with questions. Luckily, Estrella came to their rescue, dispersing the group that had surrounded them. Had fun. MMH Tilda super fun. She giggled, seeing her captain be more lively and brighter than usual. Be ready for tomorrow. We will be meeting with officials from other nations. Also, Belle, since you caused the massive quakes a couple of days ago, be prepared to be stormed with questions. Most envoys were here when your spell caused the whole of Orario to shake. They'll want to know how you did that. I see. Thank you again for everything, Estrella Sama. No worries. Now you two, no funny business for tonight. The two blushed at the implications but nodded before bidding good night to the goddess. Once she closed the door her room, the two adventurers went to Elise's room and prepared to go to sleep. They laid down and tightly clung to each other like usual and cuddled, before falling asleep in each other's arms. Good night, Elise. Good night, Belle. The following morning, the Estrella Familia plus Belle gathered in the hall, each member having equipped the special outfit they had bought a couple days prior. The goddess made sure to remind everyone to be on their best behavior before setting off to Babel. The people of Orario, civilians and adventurers alike, watched in admiration at the guardians of justice. Estrella led the familia alongside Belle and Elise, who were linked at the arm. On their way, they met the Ganesha and Loki familia, who were surprised to see that Belle was also going to join but gladly welcomed him. Heya, so you're Elise's boyfriend, eh? Speaking to him was a blue-haired girl who was just as excitable as Elise. Oh, sorry, I'm RD, vice captain of the Ganesha familia and the first level 6 of the familia. Nice to meet you, RD-san. I'm Belle Yamato Katsuki. After finishing the greetings, RD and Elise began chatting away while his attention went to a familiar face. Oh, hey Lefia. The orange-haired elf turned to Belle and blushed as she saw him in his new attire. He looked like a prince out of a novel, which wasn't good for her heart. Oh, hey Belle. She nervously fiddled with her hair as she spoke with the Renard. The curious reaction drew the attention of many, including her mentor, as she had never seen her act so shy in front of anyone other than AIS. Lefa-chan, trying to flirt with my boyfriend. When Elise turned back and asked the question, the orange-haired fairy jumped up, startled. And no, that wasn't the case. Elise stopped teasing her. Hey, sorry Lefa-chan, you were just too cute. Lefia pouted at the red head before the group all resumed their way to Babel. When they arrived, a member of the guild showed them to the meeting room. It was located high up, inside of the Tower of Babel, from where you could see the whole of Orario and the lower world spread beneath your feet. Whoa! His tail swished left and right excitedly, making the surrounding members chuckle first time. Belle turned to see Finn Daimler, captain of the Loki familia. Well, not exactly. I've seen from the top of mountains before, but I guess it's a first time I got this kind of view of a city. Hee, sometimes I forget you're 14, Belle. The boy turned to Estrella and scratched the back of his head. Hearing that, the other members were shocked to hear that he wasn't even 16, never having realized how young he actually was. Now let us not make the others wait for us. Estrella led the three familiars to the meeting place. Upon seeing them arrive, the guild employees opened the doors and announced their arrival. The room was like that of the Donatus, with its sides open instead of having windows. Inside the room there were at least a 100 people, all dressed differently reflecting the many cultures that had gathered. Gods, goddesses, emperors, empresses, queens, kings, warriors, and knights. It looked like Freya, and her executives were already there. Normally, other than officials and envoys, only a handful of people who were level 4 were allowed per faction. Since Astraea Familia was rather small, an exception was made and all members were invited. When Royman saw Belle standing next to Astraea, he was obviously bewildered but made no move to argue against the goddess of justice, as he was sure she had her reasons as much as he didn't like it. Now welcoming the Loki, Ganesha, and Astraea Familia. Everyone watched in awe as they entered the room. As they took their seats, Astraea pulled Belle to sit next to her with Elise on the other side of the Renard, while Kagaya, Lyra, and Ryu sat to her right. The rest of the Familia meanwhile sat behind her. Ara Astraea, have you taken a boy into your Familia? Despite him being handsome, that's unusual for you. The goddess of justice turned to the person who spoke and smiled. Athena, it's been a while. And no, he's not my child. He's from the Takamikazuchi Familia. Unfortunately, only S-rank familiars were invited, but there are a few reasons why I brought him here with me, though I'd rather we left that for the end of the meeting. Satisfied with the answer, Athena allowed Royman to continue with the meeting. The fat elf proceeded to announce every major power, which included Goddess Amaterasu, a name that immediately drew the attention of a certain Renard. Turning to the goddess when her name was announced, he observed her carefully along the members next to her. She had white and golden hair with bright amber eyes and a beauty that wouldn't lose to Freya. However, what caught his attention even more was the girl to her right. She was wearing blue clothes and a veil that covered her entire head, though he could make out the Renard ears and the tail wrapped around her waist. Something about that girl smelled awfully familiar. From there the meeting began, recounting news and stories that had a global impact, information and events regarding Evolus as well as feuds with other nations, most being directed to the Western Empire due to them waging wars all over the place. Astraea then had Belle speak about his encounter with Evolus that had happened a couple of months ago up north in his village. Now, since we are on the topic, I'd like to ask my fellow goddess Astraea why she brought the Renard with her. It certainly wasn't for the information he provided us on Evolus. Just like that, Freya turned everyone's attention to the goddess of justice and Belle. I suppose now is a good time. Well, there are a few reasons. Going from the Cilia, one's-eyed. Start with the fact that he is level 5. That easily got the attention of the room, particularly Royman. What? Isn't he level 4? No, I believe you were there when Take announced that his whole Familia leveled up, including Belle. Now the second reason is because of my Captain Elise. The two recently started dating and have been inseparable since, so to make sure that she focused and stayed happy, I brought him along. Belle blushed as Astraea presented their relationship like that. Wait, Lady Lovell is taken then? A handsome noble looked heartbroken hearing that. Sorry, but I found my beloved. Elise clung to Belle's arm as she confirmed that she was dating someone. Many of the men looked like they had their hearts shattered from the declaration. Amongst the outsiders, a certain Renard curiously stared at the Belle, noticing a very small detail. While embarrassed, the white-haired boy had let his guard down and his tails unfurled slightly at the tips. It was a small detail, but the woman clad in blue clothes, who had an inkling suspicion due to the smell, was now certain, and her eyes went wide seeing that. But this time it was Loki speaking, as she sensed with her godly intuition that the main reason was yet to come and was extremely important. But the main reason he is here is because of the shaking Orario suffered a couple of days ago. I'm sure most, if not all, the people in this room felt the earthquakes. Well, Belle is here because he was responsible for them. Everyone's eyes widened in shock hearing that. How? All of a sudden, Finn was incredibly invested in the situation. It happened during my expedition on the lower floors. Which floor? A random noble asked. On the 37th floor. What exactly were you fighting to force you to use such power? Finn carefully asked, wanting to know what kind of dangers his familiar could potentially find in deep floors. Freya from her side smiled as the situation became more and more exciting. An irregular monster Rex. Soon after we defeated Eudeus, the dungeon suddenly reacted for reasons I do not know. Then an irregular Eudeus spawned. Black in color, bigger and stronger, with obsidian armor and a full body instead of the usual top half of a skeleton. It wielded a cleaver that could easily cut down a tower. That was news even to the guild officials, as they had only been told that there was an irregular monster, not an irregular boss. And the shaking was caused by you. Yes, in order to finish it I used a spell which caused the explosion responsible for the earthquake that Orario felt. Elise then interjected. You had to see it. That spell was crazy. It one-shot the monster Rex. Completely. Sliced it in half. The explosion came after it died and simply pulverized its corpse. Hearing that from the captain of the Astraea Familia shocked every member in the room to the core. How big was the explosion? How much damage was done to the dungeon? Finn was leaning towards Bell at this point as he thought for a while. Floor 35 to 39 were destroyed. The 34th floor was heavily damaged. And floor 33 was also moderately damaged. Though we haven't gone past the 37th, I believe the floors below were also affected in the same way. That floored the Loki and Freya Familia, as not even Reveria, the best magician of the world, was capable of handling such powerful magic spells. Well, I suppose that would explain the quakes we felt. I'd like to see it. Bell and Elise turned to Oz as if he was crazy, being the only ones present that knew of the spell's destructive capabilities, though the god had been silenced by one of his followers, slapping him in the back of the head. Me too. The younger nobles all began pitching in one by one. The only ones with some common sense among the younger generation were from the familiars from Orario and the princes and princesses who were more responsible, but even Freya showed interest in the spell. It also didn't help that Royman wanted Bell to show them the spell to prove his story. The decision lies with Yukatsuka-san. As he heard the way he was addressed, he got an extremely Ryu-like vibes. And he was not surprised as he turned to meet the jade eyes of a high elf. I mean, wouldn't that cause panic? Haha, you sure he's not your child Astraea? The way he cares for the city is much like you. Unfortunately not Loki. But as Bell said, it would spread chaos across the city. With Evelus current activity and the quakes recently, it's best not to trouble the citizens. As a goddess of justice and guardian of order in Orario, I have to say it is extremely irresponsible to just cast a destructive spell out of curiosity and troubling the entire city. The room went silent hearing that. Even Freya decided to curb her excitement, not looking to fight with her fellow goddess. Apologies, Astraea. That was immature of me. Hearing Freya apologize shocked the familiar, but they remained quiet. Amaterasu then took matters in her hand. Astraea is right, that was extremely reckless. But at the same time, that doesn't mean we can't have a little contest to show our strength. So how about we have a tournament? Each familiar selects a representative and they fight. Then we organize a place to have the fight. So we also provide a form of entertainment to the people. Would that be all right, Royman? Of course, Kami Amaterasu. I'll organize it immediately. Everyone agreed to that, and each familiar picked their representatives, all of whom were level 5. Once the members were all confirmed, the guild employees made a list and quickly displayed it for all to see. Royman then declared that the competition would take place in 4 days at the Colosseum. It would also be open to the public so that everyone could witness the fight. Though it was short notice, he was sure many people were going to come. List of participants: Astraea Familia, Ryu Lion; Loki Familia, Ais Wallenstein; Ganesha Familia, Shakti Vama; Freya Familia, Alfred Gulliver; Takemikazuchi Familia, Bell Yamato Katsuki; Amaterasu Familia, Tanjiro Kamadu; Oz Familia, Rex Sroa; Athena Familia, Morgana Le Fay; Tyr Familia, Beolf Ganar; Adon Familia, Astolfo Alvid; Balder Familia, Eric Bloodaxe; The Miss Familia, Artoria Pendragon; Elian Familia, Alexander Iskonda; Baphomet Familia, Yujiro Kazuto; Enki Familia, Gilgamesh Babylon; Eris Familia, John Kratos. Looking around, Bell noticed a lot of samurai, warriors, and knights, all who looked very impressive, but his attention went immediately to the participants. They were all level 5s. and most had been to the dungeon only a few times. This competition was looking more exciting, and Belle couldn't wait to test himself against them. Amaterasu herself was satisfied with the outcome. She enjoyed seeing warriors test their skills against each other. She was also very curious about the red-eyed Renard who belonged to Taika Mikazuchi. She hadn't seen him for a while now, but the god hadn't told her anything about him. The deity turned to the Renard next to her to ask what she thought, only see that she was already walking towards Belle. Finally we meet. Elise and Belle turned to the woman wearing a blue kimono and tilted their heads. Who are you? Right. Allow me to introduce myself. She gave a little bow and removed her veil, revealing a face that could rival Freya. And Amaterasu, candid white hair and bright blue eyes, which held an excited glint to them. Tail and ears looked just as fluffy as his as they twitched and swished, respectively. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Oda Shinano. The next part is on its way, so unless you want to be that one person who hears about it last, like and subscribe now to stay ahead of the game. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. It's about to get epic. Thanks for listening.